Good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to see familiar faces again from just a little while ago. Thank you for joining us. This is our Maui Planning Commission meeting of Tuesday, August 27th, specifically in regards to the South Maui Community Plan. Would you be able to take our roll call, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Okay. Dale Thompson, Vice Chair.
Aloha and good afternoon.
Mel Hipolito.
Hello, good afternoon.
And for those of you online, please let us know where you are, even if any adults are in the room with you.
This is Commissioner Hipolito. I'm in Kahului in my office and I'm alone.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ashley Lindsay.
Aloha mai kako. I am at home in Wailuku alone.
Thank you. Commissioner Mark Dicos.
Aloha, everyone. I am in my home office in Napili, and my wife's in the other room.
Thank you. And Commissioner Andrea Kealoha.
Good afternoon. I'm at home and I'm alone, and my family will probably be home at some point in a couple hours.
Thank you. And Chair Kim Thayer.
Yes, I am here. Thank you very much. Just a note on timing for everybody. Oh, this is.
Oh, 8 p.m. 7 p.m. is we should be in.
Okay. So just checking on our target end time. I believe commissioners will start dropping off at 7 o'clock. Is that correct? Okay. So we will target to wrap up our discussion tonight by 7 o'clock and send everybody back to their homes and families. On the agenda today, we are only discussing goals 2.1 through 2.5. And our last discussion ended on policy 2.2.18. But we have some ones previous to that we had flagged for discussion, and I understand Mr. Jordan Molina from Public Works is here for us to answer some questions that we had last time for Public Works. But before we get there, we will do public testimony per our usual procedure. Everyone will have 3 minutes to testify. Commissioners will have the opportunity to ask questions of testifiers. So do we have anybody that has signed up to testify?
We shared a link, but I can name them.
Okay.
So are we doing online first or in person?
If we have anybody in person, we should do them.
Yeah,
We should do in
Randy.
person first. Yes. Could you call it like the first 3 names?
There's only Randy in person, and then online will be Charlene Schulenberg, John Laney, and Stephen Thiel.
Okay.
Aloha. Don't start the timer yet. I handed out testimony. Just want you to know that it's there. Okay, you can start now. Thank you for your service to our island community. My name is Randy Wagner, and I'm a longtime Kihei resident, parent, grandparent, architect, KCA board member, and chair of the KCA Design Review Committee. The South Maui Community Plan is the voice of the people of South Maui. The volunteers of the Community Plan Advisory Committee created this draft with specific ideas and visions through countless hours of deliberation, collaboration, and long meetings. South Maui has no other voice. We have no governmental body to look out exclusively for what is best in South Maui. Even our council member is chosen by the entire island. For that reason, it's really important to honor the South Maui Community Plan as a true representation of what the community is striving for. Additionally, the South Maui Advisory Committee to the Planning Commission has generally been overlooked and not utilized in projects that directly impact South Maui. Basically, the system used for governance in Maui descends from a colonial type of system with decisions coming down from a central body. Local communities have no way to establish their own unique rules and requirements. For this reason, the original definitive language in the draft South Maui Community Plan must be upheld. I have several examples, however, my point applies to the entire plan. 2.2.17, do not change the word require to support in the vision for pedestrian-oriented communities that have amenities and services located nearby. 2.2.19, very important, do not change the word require to encourage in the diversity of location for affordable housing. 2.2.21, even more important, do not change must to encourage in the requirement that affordable housing be located in the vicinity of the project that requires it, not in a remote location and not by credit or purchase. This is to avoid creating monotypes of housing. There are many benefits to having affordable homes near market rate homes, such as proximity to jobs, resulting in less traffic, less energy consumption, less pollution, etc. It's the vision of the South Maui Community Plan to not isolate wealthy communities from workforce communities. Hotel Wailea is a good example of workforce housing on site. This circles back to South Maui has no other way to express its own vision
30 seconds.
than through the language of this plan. Please do not invalidate the South Maui Community Plan by diluting the language with vague recommendations like support and encourage. Clear imperatives such as require and must will still be difficult to enforce. However, the intention of each position will be clear. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you
I guess
again.
they got my point.
Yes.
Okay, next person is online. So Charlene Schulenberg, followed by John Laney and Stephen Thiel.
Aloha, everyone. Charlene Schulenberg here. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go
Oh,
ahead.
Great. Sorry, I can't see you guys and you can't see me. So, but as long as you can hear. All
hear
right.
you.
Thanks everyone for your time. Building on what Randy just, testified to, basically, I'll just kind of go out on a limb here and say, yeah, anywhere that there was a word that was like require or to enact or to, make something happen, and then to dilute the word to, let's encourage, that's a nice way of saying, oh gosh, we really hope that these guys are going to do the right thing. So it just doesn't make sense that CPAC sat through all of this and that the community sat through all of this and that dozens and dozens and dozens of testifiers sat through all of this and it was voted on to use those words. We put those words in there. That's preferred language with teeth so that we can do something that's verifiable, not make a suggestion. We haven't had a review. This is our first review and gosh, what was it? 20 something years? I mean, it's time we got to get real about this. So anyway, policy 2.240. The intent was to have to enact stricter water requirements on hotel development for new development. And it says here, okay, well, new development, we want it to be water neutral, but that would be difficult to implement. Okay, but not impossible. So things that are worthy of doing are often difficult. And so we really want, we really want to think this through. And we want to remind everybody, Kihei, South Maui gets its water from Iao. This is not an infinite source. We don't have our own source of water. So, we need the difficulties for new and expanded hotels to be weighed against the interests of the South Maui community. That section 2 says it is for safe, healthy, livable communities for
1 minute.
all. The all means all that live here. So anyway, that's the main point. I think that hotels are hugely disproportionate consumers of water, and we know that for irrigation, recreational features, no limit on time for showers, yada, yada, yada. So, water neutral right now, this is important. This is life. Ola ika vai. So
30 seconds.
that's all I've got to say. Please be considerate of the community and what they voted for.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, the good news is there's only 4 of them, and they've already finished.
Somebody unmuted online.
Somebody is, yeah.
Any questions from the commission for this testifier? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Appreciate you guys.
Okay, next up is John Laney, followed by Stephen Theo and Johan Lau.
Hello. I would like to reaffirm what both Randy and Shar said. This is just really important for South Maui. And I don't know if you're aware, but right now there are plans to add 4,000 units to South Maui. There's Wailea 670, there's Leadcore with 1,000 units, there's Mount McKenna with like 1,000 units. And adding all of those units to South Maui, we need infrastructure to support it. And so when the plan says require, it's important that infrastructure or whatever, water, whatever it's referring to is required. It's, you know, I'm not anti-development, but when we add a bunch of units to South Maui, we need to increase our infrastructure. Where are people going to park at the beach? How are people going to get from McKenna to Kahului? How much longer will the wait lines be on the Pialani Highway? So it's just, you know, there's a lot going on, and the South Maui plan is looking at the whole picture and saying we need these things to support the growth that's already planned, let alone the future growth for South Maui. I would like to call your attention to, let's see, I would like to call your attention to policy 2.1.14. And this is saying to remove the North-South Collector Road as a policy. And it's important that we leave it as a policy because the North-South Collector Road was initially intended over 20 years ago to connect South Maui to South Kihei to North Kihei. And permits have been granted that have already gotten in the way of completing that collector road. We need
30 seconds.
the planning department to be required to look at the policy as well as the actions. So we want to leave it as a policy. And I think I'm out of time, but thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Kealoha.
Follow for your testimony, Mr. Laney. Did you say 2.2.14?
I said 2.1.14.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none. Next testifier.
Next testifier is Stephen Theo, followed by Johan Lau and Lucien Dini.
You can see me all right and hear me?
We can hear you. I think we just are seeing blue. Oh, no, there you are. Somebody else
Okay.
is blue.
Okay, terrific. Aloha, my name is Stephen Teal. I own a condominium hotel unit at Kama'ole Sands, and I am chair of an owner's rezoning committee that is examining the proper zoning designation for Kama'ole Sands. We ask that the South Maui Community Plan be revised to properly reflect that Kama'ole Sands should be designated under a hotel zoning designation. Although the community plan's policy to terminate STR use over properties like Kama'ole Sands is fundamentally flawed, just like Mayor Bisson's bill to ban STR use for Minatoya list properties is fundamentally flawed, I will concentrate my comments on the current improper designation of Kama'ole Sands under an apartment residential category in the community plan. Mayor Bisson has said, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, it is a duck. Kama'ole Sands is a duck. It is a condominium hotel that has always been used for transient vacation guests. We know this because we have examined the documentation that was provided to the state of Hawaii when Kama'ole Sands was built. The use of units for transient vacation guests was fully disclosed to and approved by the state even before Kama'ole Sands was built. From our research, we know that Kama'ole Sands was advertised from the time of its construction as having a guest activities desk and that daily housekeeping services were provided, just like a hotel. Kama'ole Sands was first operated by Colony Resorts for the vacationing public, and the AOAO was incorporated by Aston Hotels and Resorts, a Hawaii-based hotel and resorts company. Currently, Castle Resorts and Hotels operates the 24/7 registration desk at Kama'ole Sands, where all guests are required to register. The registration desk is in a building separate and apart from the 10 buildings that house the condominium hotel units. Castle Resorts has dozens of staff on site and a contract with a linen services company. There are additional cleaners and housekeepers employed on the property as well. Landscapers and 24/7 security services are also provided at Kama'ole to ensure that the grounds are well maintained and that guests comply with the property's rules, just like the rules at any hotel property. While like a hotel, there are a handful of long-term occupants, nearly 95% of the units at Kama'ole Sands are used to support the tourist industry on Maui. Kama'ole Sands is part of the economic engine of Kihei and was ahead of its time as a vacation property that offered guests full kitchens and services, just like many of today's hotels' vacation clubs that offer the exact same amenities to guests. The condominium hotel units at Kama'ole Sands provide significant get and taxes to Maui County, and its owners are very supportive of the local community and the surrounding community. Given the time constraints, this oral testimony will be supplemented with additional written testimony outlining our request that Kama'ole Sands be designated as hotel in the South Maui Community Plan so that its historic and current use is properly reflected therein. Mahalo for your time and much aloha to all of you.
Thank you for your testimony. Just a point of clarification, are you referring to the designation that's shown on the maps in section 3 of the plan?
Well, section 3, but also it pertains to, I guess, policy 2.25, 2.2.25, which speaks to the phasing out of existing vacation rentals to long-term occupancy, and that would impact Kama'ole Sands.
Okay, I just wanted to note, we're not quite on the maps yet, so we're not discussing, designation between residential or hotel.
We just thought we would put it on the record for you now because we are looking at this and examining it. So we just want to make sure that that you're aware that that is our ask, and you will receive some written testimony from us, further detailing our research.
Yeah, I just want to let you know that we won't be discussing that today, so it'd be much more timely to provide that testimony when we actually have section 3 on the agenda.
Okay. Mahalo.
Thank you. Any questions for the testifier? Seeing none, thank you for your test. Oh, wait, Commissioner Lindsay, go ahead. Oh, not.
Sorry, I didn't know how to turn on the mic. Thank you for your testimony today. I had a question. I noticed you mentioned a bunch of things like your property is set up like a hotel. But in terms of like a community and where it lays in the community, is it like the neighbors are hotels or something like that? Since this is the community plan. Or maybe you can submit that when you submit your written testimony later or consider it later.
I can. I'm happy to address that, Ms. Lindsay. In terms of Kama'ole Sands sits very close to Wailea. And so there's basically a band of properties. Halakamoli is beside us. Then there's Maui, Kama'ole, that's beside us.
I'm actually really familiar with Kama'ole Sands, but I just want to make sure you include that part in your testimony.
Oh, yeah, happy to do that because it very much is confined to a vacation resort area in many respects. So I'm happy to address that.
Okay, thank you. Just for future.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Any other questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you again for your testimony.
Mahalo.
Next testifier is Johan Lau, followed by Lucien Diné and Marie Kimi.
Aloha, Johan Lau testifying on behalf of myself. And I'm actually going to testify on goals 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4. But first, I want to address what the previous testifier had said about, this being a resort area. I actually live right next door to Kamaole Sands, and there are two complexes right next to it that are not Minatoya because of when they were built. And I'm actually surprised he said it's not suited for residential because it's not that different from where I live. And it's like a lot of apartments all across America. So just because it's not single family doesn't mean it's unsuitable for people to live in. And those are actually really nice. Like I would actually love to live in those units. It's pretty well laid out, and it's not that different as far as landscaping, all that stuff. It's not the Grand Wailea is my point. So these goals 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, they are basically about protecting the environment, public health, and resiliency, with things like climate change. And this kind of relates to all those questions that Commissioner Dicos had at the end of your last meeting. And so I just want to point out that, when you guys pass regulations, whether it's SMA rules, shoreline rules, community plans, and they have exemptions, it's kind of like you can't do anything about those things once those are exempted and all of that. So this is really the time to ask questions and make sure what you're doing is solid and strong, and that relates really directly to what folks were talking about with the language being strong and require rather than encourage and that kind of stuff. But I also think a thing to address with the planning department is how they actually enforce and how they actually do regulation as far as permitting. And the past week has been difficult for quite a few of us in South Maui because at TMK 239046013, there has been unpermitted grubbing. And this is an area designated in the wetlands overlay, and it's in the SMA. So there's regulations to protect water quality, protect the environment, protect cultural resources. And if there's no enforcement, then all of those basically mean nothing. And if you can grub a 7-acre parcel, it basically makes all those regulations moot. So if you guys can find any way to work that into your questions, like how does the planning department plan to actually do what's in the community plan and zoning and SMA, all that kind of stuff. Please find out how they're going to actually protect all these things that are in the community plan is protected, like the gulches,
1 minute,
wetlands, archaeological resources, burials. It's all in the community plan, but who's going to actually enforce the regulations and protect these things? I think that's really important to address. And that is my testimony. Mahalo.
Mahalo for your testimony. Questions from the commission, Commissioner Lindsay.
Hi, thank you for your testimony today. Can you give me that TMK again, please?
Yes, 239046013, and there's an RFS. The number of that RFS on ClickFix is 17092039.
Okay, thank you for that testimony.
Any other questions from the commission? Seeing none, mahalo for your testimony.
Next up is Lucien Diné, followed by Marie Kimi.
Aloha and good afternoon, commissioners. Well, thank you for putting in this long day and being so supportive of the community of Hana coming out. That is a big deal. I would like to support in general the things you've been hearing from the Kihei Community Association. These are the folks with their boots on the ground there, And most of them have watched their community develop the way it has developed for the past 20, 30, 40, who knows, 50 years. And they're looking to this community plan to sort of be a breath of fresh air, a course correction, to really try to steer the ship in a direction that's going to be more sustainable in the long term. So I strongly agree with the idea, like in policy 2.240, the idea of encouraging new hotels and remodels of existing hotels or expansion of existing hotels to be water neutral. I mean, if we don't start requiring new growth to be water neutral, where are we going to get water in the short term? It just isn't there. Our biggest water users in South Maui are larger resorts. And as new medium-sized resorts and expansions of existing resorts are planned, we've got to look for the savings somewhere. So please keep that required. Also, I believe in the last discussion, your last meeting, there was like confusion about why a 150-foot setback along Pi'ilani Highway was proposed by the folks on the Community Plan Advisory Committee. And, you know, I sat through a lot of those discussions, and I heard some very, you know, heartbreaking pleas from members, especially some of the Kama'aina members of that group, saying, you know, look, we've seen what happens to South Kihei Road if there's not adequate setbacks. This is our chance to get something right. If we require all the new developments, irregardless of whether they have some plan in it, the planning commission, whatever, developments change their plans all the time. It doesn't really make or break them. But the 150 feet would ensure that
30
we don't just
seconds.
have another long strip mall following our Pi'ilani Highway with all the new growth that's proposed. So please strongly consider what the folks of South Maui felt should be the language. Mahalo.
Mahalo for your testimony. Questions from the commission? Commissioner Lindsay.
Regarding that 150-foot space, I'm not sure if I understand. There would either be open space or a strip mall. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, when you don't have a adequate buffer, when your buffer is 30 feet, 40 feet from the highway, you have things just either their parking lots or their buildings just line the highway. And there's just no breathing room. And it does look like your California strip mall type of development when you do that. And even though, you know, of course, Kihei has fancier strip malls, we have our shopping centers, but you have a bunch of asphalt and then a bunch of buildings, or you have things right outside the sidewalk. And what the vision was is, can there be something with an opener space, landscaping, even if it's rock landscaping, even if it's not irrigated, but if it's not everything just starts right at the road.
Okay, I'm not sure how a strip mall connects to a project. If it's like a subdivision, for example, I would imagine that the 150 feet take away from that subdivision. But thank you for your perspective. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Most larger subdivisions have a commercial attribute right along the highway.
Any other questions from the commission? Seeing none, mahalo again for your testimony.
Mahalo.
Last person online signed up is Marie Kimi, and then back to in person, there's one add-on, Sandra Amaral Cross.
Hi, this is Marie Kimmy. Oops, there's my video. Oh, it keeps going away. Well, anyway, try it one more time.
We can hear you just fine.
Okay, fine. All right. Yes, I am an architect, and I've lived in Kihei now for almost 40 years. I've seen it grow exponentially. I've also seen a lot of development, good and bad. But I've come here today mainly to stress and to repeat what others have been saying, that wherever the document, the South Maui Community Plan document says require, please leave that in. As has been pointed out, it's already hard enough to enforce, but if it's encouraged or shall or might be done, that's not going to work. The developers, as has already been pointed out, they're going to go out and do what they want to do anyway. But if we leave the word require in wherever it is, I think that's going to help. I also want to stress that all those areas where it mentions ecological or cultural, and again, we're looking here at some cultural, definitely Native Hawaiian sites that are known and some unknown that need to be understood and somehow celebrated in South Maui on the whole island. And I just feel both of those things are very important, that we require proper utilization of our place, and that we also reflect on the sacred nature of this island. I realize I'm not quite out of time, but again, I stress what everyone has been saying. I've been a member of the Kihei Community Association for probably 10 or 12 years. And I am a member of the Design Review Committee. I've looked at some projects up and down the coast and up all the way almost to the mountain. So I am familiar with sort of what's planned and echo the thought that water, where are we going to get it? And that's my testimony.
All of your testimony. Any questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you again.
Okay, we're gonna go back to in person. So added on, there's Sandra Amaral Kraus, and then Aaron Mukai and Rory Frampton.
Kalamai, so sorry. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Thank you so much for giving your day and volunteering. I know you guys had that 1 o'clock meeting and now us, and I appreciate you for that. I sat through every but 2 meetings of the Kihei Planning Commission meetings, and you had many valuable assets there. But the one that comes out most for me is a young man that I saw grow up, whose family has been in the Kihei, Makena area for over 200 years. The Kalani cows, Vernon. And he testified, and he does extensive research. And if you read the dockets and the plan, you see that he not only brought it to the floor, but they itemized it in their plan. They worked really, really hard. I do know that from the many, many years that I've sat through the revising of community plans and the length that it takes to get it done, that there is the need for the planning department and the county of Maui to review and make suggestions for to be within the realms of the law, to codify what is already codified, to be diligent in filling the responsibilities, not only to what we put forth in the community plan, but also every other citizen within the community. And I understand that. But I humbly ask all of you, the word require and must was deliberated
1 minute.
in extensive dialogue And they were quite adamant because it is correct. So much has happened in Kihei since the osmos of Kihei opening it up with the one hotel in Makena. But we need to look on and say, these young men and women who sat on this committee were from Kihei, and they spent their
30 seconds.
many hours coming up with a plan. I humbly ask all of you, and I know you will, follow the wishes of the community as it was represented by some very intelligent and informed Kihei community members that have lived there. Thank you. Mahalo.
Mahalo for testimony. Any questions from the commission? Seeing none. Next testifier.
Next testifier is Erin Mukai, followed by Rory Frampton, and then Cal Chip Chase.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for your time today and the opportunity to be here. My name is Erin Mukai. I'm a project coordinator with Pacific Rimland. First, I wanted to acknowledge and support the department's recommended changes to the affordable housing policies. Thank you for that. I do want to spend some time providing testimony regarding policy 2.45B that prevents new structures from being developed within 100 feet of gulches and drainage ways. Projects can be designed to capture additional stormwater runoff, and if I could, I'd like to suggest following similar language to what was adopted in the West Maui Community Plan and also in policy 2.45A, which would include the provision of unless low impact development strategies are implemented to prevent stormwater runoff, and then continuing. This would be a much more workable solution. Thank you.
Any questions for the testifier? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Next testifier is Rory Frampton, followed by Cal Chip Chase, and then back to online list would be Mike Moran.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Rory Frampton. I'm a planning consultant, and I'm representing Haleakala Ranch and Ko'onaulu Ranch. They own a lot of lands, Mauka of the highway, that have been included in the plan for within the growth boundaries. My concern is that I'm going to talk about today is a policy that you guys actually reviewed last week. I apologize for not being timely with my comments, but I'd respectfully like you to request you to consider 2.1.23. which says it would require the development of the Mauka bypass prior to or concurrent with the development of parcels Mauka of the Piilani Highway. This policy wasn't really discussed much at the CPAC. It got thrown in as part of a batch of comments. It wasn't deliberated on. And my main concern is that there's two versions of a quote Mauka bypass. This one seems to imply the original version from back in the day where they were talking about a bypass from, say, Maui Meadows or Wailea all the way to the highway, all the way to Veterans Highway, above all the growth areas. The newer version, and one that's been adopted by the state of Hawaii, and it's identified as the Kihei Mauka bypass, same words here, goes through the urban growth areas, the Mauka urban growth areas. And it's embraced by policy 2.1.13. And I've included that in my testimony, if you have the testimony in front of you. And so it almost appears like there's two bypasses that are being recommended. The one that goes through the urban areas versus the one that goes way above it and for many miles. The one that's, I think, is included under 2.123 is really not realistic. State and federal governments are not looking at those types of roadways anymore. The state, when they recommended the lower one through the development areas, concluded that
1 minute.
Concluded that coordination with long-term development of Mauka lands would facilitate phasing and funding of portions of the roadway by adjacent developers. So I think that's the one that we certainly endorse. The community seems to have endorsed. I talked to Randy about this before, and she says, yeah. So that she agrees. That's the one we're talking about, the one that's under 2.1.13. If there's a desire to include the more traditional bypass concept
30 seconds.
on the map, then please don't require that it be developed prior to or concurrent with Mauka development, and maybe just have it on there as kind of an aspirational thing. I did pass out testimony regarding 2.45A and B. That's what Aaron testified on the gulches. And I'm concerned about the map. The map is very hard to read and interpret. It identifies topographic features that aren't, they don't serve as hydrologic features.
Time.
And you can see my testimony that I provided, but I do have a lot of concerns with that map and have suggested some amendments.
Yes, thank you. Questions? Yep, Vice Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, can you expand a little bit on the building next to the gulches?
Yeah, so there's
kind of arbitrary. Where's the top of the hill, I guess?
Yeah, the top of bank is very hard to define, and there's maps. There's the map that's referenced. If you take a look at that map and try to discern where the boundaries are, it's very hard. It's very fuzzy. And if you look at it, you'd think that they're trying to protect gulches that run all the way down to the sea. But there's just pieces here and there's pieces there that are isolated segments. And I think they just went by topographic features, not necessarily whether or not they had hydrologic properties. So I think it's kind of to include a 100-foot buffer from those minor features. To me, it's kind of a waste. It's not doing anything because those features aren't serving as drainage gullies. And it would be an impediment to site planning. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Dicos.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Frampton. I think you supported the other testifier about controlling stormwater near the gulches and, perhaps avoiding the buffer area. Can you talk a bit about can you clarify those measures for mitigating stormwater or controlling it on site?
If those are actual gulches that are important hydrologic features or drainage ways, then I would support the testimony of the previous speaker. I think that can be done on a site plan basis. If you have the language in here that's strong, that's what the intent is. But if you link it to the map, that's my concern, is that the map just doesn't comport with reality in many instances. So I think as policies, without referencing the map, and as long as it's major drainage ways or these named drainage ways, and which, by the way, it should be Keokea instead of Waimahaihai. Keokea feeds significant wetlands in Kihei. Waimahaihai does not. It's a very small feature as it goes through Kihei. So yeah, my main problem with the map, I think the policy is okay for major drainage ways.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any additional questions? I do have one more question regarding the Mauka bypass. I think it was the director said at our last meeting that developers envision this bypass project happening already.
That's not what I call the traditional bypass, the one that goes from, let's say, Wailea to Punane. The one that's under 2.1.13, yes, we've shown that alignment within the Kihei Mauka project area. It's in the state transportation plan. I believe MRTP has roadways that would connect to it. So that's the one. 2.1.13 is the one is the policy that's, I think the director was referring to, not 2.1.23. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dicos.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Same question. Is that the same as the collector? I apologize, I'm not familiar. Or is that the collector's totally different bypass?
It's been called the Mauka North-South Collector Road. There is a Makai North-South Collector Road that gets referred to more often than not. That's the one that's been funded, and it's supposed to happen soon. The Mauka Collector Road, in the policy, it's actually called multimodal transportation corridor, a Mauka multimodal transportation corridor. So we might want to just kind of agree on terminology if we want. It might be, I think staff, when we spoke about it, said it might be confusing if we have two north-south collector roads, a Makai and a Mauka, but the multimodal transportation corridor is it's kind of a mouthful too. So,
And the 2.1.13, is that Makai?
that's Mauka.
That's Mauka. And is there any private property?
Yes.
That
It's
goes on to?
almost all private property.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any additional questions for this testifier? Seeing none. Thank you again.
And thank you guys for your service. Thank you.
Next is Cal Chip Chase, followed by Mike Moran, then Brian Ward.
Chair, members, hello again. I wanted to put this discussion over mandatory versus encouraging language into context. One is the context of process. The reason Maui Planning Commission has a role in this process, and it doesn't simply go from CPAC to the council or even just CPAC to law, is because the commission's voice in this is important. Its broader experience with permitting is important. Its broader experience with Maui is important. So you're not a rubber stamp for the South or for the community planning effort. That's a draft. In that effort, I just went through quickly and counted the number of times where an owner or an affordable housing developer or a builder's recommendations were ignored because when they said it would make it harder for us to develop housing, or a map designation was inappropriate, like the wetland or the gulch designations that we heard. I counted 25 times where those comments were just simply ignored. And so this forum provides another place to air those because you have that deeper experience. The second context is in history or figures. Only 6% of the land on Maui is in a developable category of urban or rural. Most of that land, or much of it, is in the SMA. Almost 11% of the total island is within the SMA. What that means is that almost everything significant comes before the commission anyway, on a special management area permit or a special use permit for the agricultural district or a rezoning. And so if it is proper to condition a project with infrastructure or with the location of affordable housing or eliminating credits for affordable housing, this commission has the power to do it on a case-by-case basis. It doesn't need to bind all future commissions for 20 years. And that is the effect of that language. If we look at just two lawsuits, one is the Maui Lani lawsuit over the park just down the road. The lawsuit challenged that sports park on the ground that it did not comply with the community plan. It's been 10 years of litigation. It's currently sitting before the Hawaii Supreme Court. Or the Kahoma project in West Maui. That was challenged, even though it's a 201H project, as failing to get an SMA permit not in compliance with the community plan. Hawaii Supreme Court said it must comply with the community plan, even though it's a 201H project. That's the effect of these restrictions. And so what all of that has led to is that it takes $220,000 of annual income to afford the median home on Maui. And that the processing time for a single family home is 206 days to get a permit. For two or more units, it is 416 days to get a permit. We have to ask ourselves, when we review these policies, are we making it harder to build homes for the folks who live here? Are we making it harder to earn a living here? And if the answer to both of those is yes, we are making it harder, we should have a very good reason for it. Thank you.
Thank you for testimony. Vice Chair.
So what policies would you say, talking about, that would alleviate some of that?
So I've highlighted some of those in prior testimony, and I certainly stand by that, and we stand by the support for the department's recommendations that I went over in the last meeting. But just to pick on a couple here, one is 2.1.9, which is the 150-foot setback that was referenced today and that we talked about last time. That certainly means a lot less land for the landowners along the highway to develop, and those landowners are looking at developing homes. So that means far fewer homes in those projects. The other policy that I'll note is 2.2.18, which does relate to requirements for developments, including affordable housing. That policy, as I think recommended by this body at this point, is inconsistent with the same sort of policy that was adopted for the West Maui Community Plan very recently. And so we have a situation where we have now inconsistent policies in different community plans addressing the same issue. The one in South Maui, much more restrictive, much more difficult for developers to satisfy.
Sorry, was that 2.1.18?
Yes.
Or 2.2.18.
2.2.18. Thank you, Chair.
You have any additional questions?
Well, that one says require them to be near jobs or centers. It doesn't really specifically say within a mile or 5 minutes walk or something.
Right. And so if you compare that with the version that was adopted for West Maui, they note when possible. And then they go on to say, if not possible, projects should at least be near transit. And then projects should include sidewalks and all of those other things. And so we're describing in the plan what our vision, what we would like to happen, recognizing that that may not happen on every single project, and allowing for those circumstances that good projects move forward, even if they don't meet that standard.
Okay. Commissioner Lindsay?
Thank you for your testimony today. I don't see it on your May 28th submittal. But that was in the threes, I think. Did you submit it on the one before that? Because you're 2.3 in your May 28th submittal, but
I believe that it would have been in my submittal for the last hearing. So the earlier one in August, which I think was our first meeting back after the break.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just want to make a note, there's testimony from May 13th, dated May 13th, that has 2.2.18.
So it would have been in that as well.
Commissioner DeGhost.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chip Chase. Hope they're paying you overtime. One question, a lot of talk, I think you mentioned it, but about the encourage versus require. Encourage, if we were to define encourage, well, how would that be defined in your opinion?
So I would define it in the ordinary term to mean something that we seek to happen or hope will happen, but not something that is absolutely required before a project may go forward. And so when a project comes before the commission on a rezoning or on a special use permit or on an SMA, it must meet the community plan. That would include addressing that specific term. How are you encouraging this value, this goal? If the answer is we're not, or we can't, then they should have a good reason why they're not or they can't. And it's up to then that commission, whether this body or another composition of it, to decide whether that reason is a good enough reason in light of the project. The commission may say no and say you don't meet this policy goal. You're not doing anything to encourage this value and you don't have a good reason not to. So we don't approve your project. What it saves us from is the situation where you say you're required to do it. And you have, say, a 201H project that can't, for whatever reason, can't make it. And it's the difference between this project going forward or not. The future commission would not be able to approve the project because that requirement would not be built or met, however good the project may be. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
Okay, and similar if you flipped it and let's say a project did come and they say, you know, we were encouraged to meet these 4 criteria. We met 3, we just cannot meet the 4th. Is there not the commission's ability to, you know, assess that? Is that a realistic versus we're only required to do 0 of them? did you try to do the 4? In my experience, usually the answer is, well, that wasn't required. That's not in the code. The code doesn't require that, is usually the response. So is there a difference between one or the other?
I would say there is, Commissioner. So if the code is silent, and the code doesn't say anything, then I could see a situation where you would get an answer from an applicant saying the code doesn't require that because it's silent on it. If the code encourages, or here the community plan encourages, a particular outcome or policy or action, then that is always something that an applicant will need to address, whether it's SMA or zoning or special use permit. The difference is, in your hypothetical, if the project met 3 of 4, say, articulated goals and could not meet the 4th, that future commission, under an encourage or should should make best efforts to framework, would have the discretion to decide whether the project goes forward anyway, because it's met 3 of the 4 and has a good reason for not meeting the 4th. Under required or must or shall framework, that future commission would not have that discretion, and the project could not go forward, however otherwise good it might be.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Chair.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go back to online testifiers. So be Mike Moran, followed by Brian Ward and Terry, no last name given.
Aloha, Chair Thayer and volunteer commissioners. My name is Mike Moran. I'm a CPAC member. I'm going to express that, as you well know, this community plan is for the community of South Maui, and this draft plan was crafted by the residents of South Maui. That's who it's for. I think it seems apparent when you hear the testimony, you hear one side from the people who are living here, who attended those meetings. Then you hear another side from developers who don't live in South Maui. You hear from attorneys who don't live in South Maui, property owners who don't live in South Maui. I saw some testimony from attorneys on Oahu, and we look at it, this is for our community. This is what our community wants. And what other people have a business interest, well, that's fine for them. We don't. We just live here, and this is what we want. I'll just take one example of the last testifier mentioned about, I don't know if he was talking about island-wide or county-wide, how most of the developable land is in the oh gosh, I lost the term. That's below the highway in South Maui. The challenge is, anybody that knows South Maui knows that the vast majority of that land is already developed. There's hardly any vacant land left in that zone. And the few plots that are left are wetlands or in gulches. So all the developable land is what above the highway. That's outside of that zone. So it's showing that it's one more indication that people from outside are not really aware of what South Maui is about. So we ask you to listen to us and keep that strong language. You heard that from all the people who live here. We want that strong language. The people who have business interests don't want that strong language in there. And I'll just touch briefly on that 2.1.9, the 150-foot
30 seconds.
boundary. When you come into Kihei, if you're coming in, the first developable land that you can see is a horrendous looking commercial zone on the Mauka side of the highway that's right up against the highway. That's what we're trying to avoid with saying put in this 150-foot landscape boundary. There's plenty of land. The land goes all the way up to the top of the mountain. That's why we want that boundary in there. I think my time is up. Mahalo.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions from the commission? Commissioner Kealoha.
For your testimony, Ms. Moran. You mentioned something, and I heard the other testifiers say the same thing about the 150-foot setback. We don't want to see malls right next to the road, and commercial properties. But what if it was a housing project? Would you have the same feeling? Like, do you care if it's one or the other, or you just, you know what I mean?
Well, in general, as I said, that's what we've gotten before. Is that, and again, I know you guys are not from here, but I think you drive through sometimes. And when you come in, there are some houses there that are not obtrusive, but once you get to Ohukai, where most people say that they know the gas station is there at Ohukai, and if you go south from there, you see this huge commercial mall, or whatever you want to call it, strip mall, that's right up against the highway. And once you pass that, you pass another gas station. There's that big plot of land that's called the Pialani Promenade. That the owners of that land, the owners from Dallas, Texas, who own that land, wanted to put in a huge mall in there. It got the nickname the Mega Mall. So that's the next piece of land there. So yes, that could be. There's nothing for them to stop them from building homes. But when we went through that land use commission hearing for years, they had no interest in building homes. Their interest was a commercial mall. Then you pass that, and the next thing is our beautiful new high school. Well, you can't see the high school from the road because that was well planned. They put it way back up with a boundary in there, a landscape boundary in there. Continue down the road, you see the what we always call the R&T Park, which they call it Lipoa now. You don't see any of those buildings from the highway. It's set way back. They're building homes up there now, but it's a mix. But all of that, it's much better to be set back. And there could be an extreme challenge, yes. We're going to build 100% affordable homes. And if we have to go 150-foot setback, we're going to lose some homes here. Yep, that could be an exception to the rule. And then, changes could be made. The council could decide they want to do this. But the vast majority is not that. So that's why we're asking for what we see, what exists. If something came up, somebody's going to build homes that will be that close to the highway. That could be an exception. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions from the commission? Seeing none, mahalo for your testimony.
Next testifier is Brian Ward, followed by Terry, and then Clint Hansen.
Mahalo, Chair and fellow commissioners. I was actually part of CPAC for that, along with Mike and a bunch of others, for a very long year of deliberation and discussion. But more of a statement, really, I think, for the body and as well as those that are actually attending and listening, is I think I would encourage you to look at the plan as a whole. You can look at individual policies, but there are actions that actually support initiatives that actually reinforce some of the policies. And that was the intent, at least my understanding of what we were doing as a committee. Was there are some things within the policies that you could say required versus encouraged. I think encourage is probably a couple of where I'm at.
Oh,
but
hold on, sorry. You're cutting out,
Sorry.
and we're missing some of your words, and I think it's mixing up your testimony. Do you think you could maybe turn your video off just to make sure we can hear you all the way.
Absolutely.
Do you think you could start over to make sure that we hear everything you're saying correctly?
I put out video. Is that better?
Yes, I think it sounds better.
Okay. So
Can we start at
I will.
Stevens? Okay.
I can start over.
Yes,
I'll
go ahead.
bypass it. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Chair. Okay. So I was part of CPAC, and as part of as well as Mike, what I would encourage as commissioners, you guys to look at is the plan as a whole. If you look at individual specific policies, they could seem very isolated. There are actions in many cases or other policies that reinforce or substantiate other ways that things could potentially be supported or completed in the future, such as water usage. If you look at actions, there are actions that state what our recommendations were on putting something in place to be able to change, reinforce, and not be as reliant on the water resources that we currently have. So I know it's hard, and trust me, a year of looking through this stuff, learned a lot. It's hard to kind of sometimes see the bigger picture when you're looking at individual things, but I would just encourage you to take a step back as a body, as well as a community, and look at the plan as a whole, and not necessarily start to micro change individual policies, because that's for new developments. Actions are going to be for what's actually what the county or planning the department or state they're responsible, or other bodies are responsible for, that really bring the whole entire package together. So again, I don't have any specific comments on any of the specific policies. I will actually compliment planning. I would support it, or do support, for the in general, the most part, the recommendations. And from the commissioners, I would actually support your feedback in support of what you actually kind of either counter proposed or agreed to. So on both sides, I support both of those. But again, I encourage, look at the plan as a holistic, not necessarily as individual policy specific, because it's easy to, I think, get lost. And I'll give you just an example that we talked about connectivity. If you look at some of the parcels that are being recommended for development, they're isolated little pieces that if you require that they have certain aspects to the policies, it doesn't make sense. Versus if you listen to Rory, where they have more of a master plan for kind of the Malcolm side up at the high school, it is a much more holistic and much more appropriate way to apply those policies, which I can fully support and agree with. So in retrospect, there are things that I will be making recommendations to say, I think we may have been a little too strict on individual parcels that are kind of already set within a community versus establishing and developing a wider community. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the commission? I do have a follow-up question just to make sure I heard you correctly. Were you saying, well, with respect to this discussion of, strong language versus softened language, some of the department's suggestions in some cases sort of soften the language, but you said you would be open to that?
In listening in retrospect, kind of now that we've kind of stepped away from our weekly meetings, I think in instances it would be appropriate to not have it required, because it would not necessarily be feasible if you look at some of the situations or certain parcels. So I'm torn, because I agree that stronger language is beneficial, but I would also say what I've seen is that I think we hamstring ourselves, so to speak, in making progress in doing what's right for the community, because we have such strict specific requirements. And I can give an example that the Pialani Highway being expanded down in the lower south end side, it has been put into litigation that multiple developers have to do X, Y, and Z. Won't get into the specific, but it basically has prevented the highway from actually getting expanded because everybody has to do everything all at the same time. And that type of coordination isn't necessarily going to happen because people have different EISs, they have different timing for their SMAs, they have different budgets, they have different. So my concern would be is some of the language could preclude us progressing and moving forward and doing what's right for the community. And I think it was pointed out, I think that this body has the opportunity to use the discretion and look at the overarching and macro plans and say, this, you're trying to kind of skip the system, or you're part of the system and you're doing the right things. So let's progress forward so that we can actually build what community needs in a timely manner.
Thank you for that insight into your thoughts. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And just as a side note, if at any point, if you guys ever need a resource, I would be happy to provide any insight that I had from my experience of CPAC. Obviously, others may have different opinions, but I'm more than welcome to provide kind of thought process discussions and/or kind of viewpoints that may or may not be helpful to you.
Thank you. And I guess on that note, as we proceed, and this is for, I would say, all CPAC members, if we welcome your testimony at these meetings, you can kind of hear where a discussion goes at each meeting and, you're able to provide testimony in response. I don't know if we can have you as resource people, but hopefully you can submit testimony.
Absolutely.
Next testifier.
Next testifier is Terry, to be followed by Clint Hansen, and then we'll return back to in-person David Good.
All right. So mahalo, Chair, and Planning Commission members. My name is Terry Chen. I don't have the same expertise as the prior testifier. I'm just an owner of a condo complex unit at Kamoli Sands, and I'm just requesting that Kamoli Sands be considered a hotel in the new South Maui community plan. Over 400 of the 440 units are short-term rented. It's got a lot of features for as long as I've known, I think even from the beginning, that really make it look like a hotel. It's got 24-hour front desk, concierge service, I think over 10 full-time staff members. From a finance standpoint, the operating budget is close to 20 million. It's audited every year. Revenues approach $1 million every year. From a tax standpoint, I pay about $2,500 a month in TATM property taxes. And if you extrapolate that across the complex and include the GE taxes on the AAO revenue, that's over $1 million in tax revenue. So I will personally admit that the mayor's bill to allow half the STRs on Maui is driving my request specifically for this complex. But I'm not really looking out for any business interest. I'm just trying to pay my bills, which are over $12K annually, monthly, not annually, monthly. And a proper zoning would allow me to continue to do that and remain involved in my community. I'm sure a lot of the other fellow owners feel the same way. Actually, I know about at least 400 of them feel the same way. So,
Mahalo for your testimony. Questions from the commission? Oh, seeing none. Thank you again.
thank you.
Next testifier is Clint Hansen, followed by David Good.
Hello, Clint Hansen, Kihei resident, conceived and raised here. And I love the South Maui plan. I think it's fantastic, but I do believe that the language should be changed to suggest away from require. I think that is a much softer and better approach and allows the document to be more dynamic and more readily applied as opposed to preventing things from happening. It facilitates. So I am all for changing the language to be softer. Although I do love a lot of the suggestions in there, I think it's fantastic. I just don't believe it should prevent functioning businesses from existing and the inability to get something done. I mean, we're already one of the lowest in terms of business friendliness in the US, and I just really think it should be more flexible language. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the commission? I do have one question. Considering your support for this plan, are there any of the policies that you would want to keep the strong language?
Well, there's a lot of the strong language that I like, but no, I think that it's always dependent on the situation. So I would like it to be considered, but not required.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Next testifier.
Oh, sorry. Next testifier is David Good.
Aloha, Chair, members of the Commission, David Good here. I have a few comments to kind of hopefully summarize what I've testified in the past upon and also what I've heard today. So first, 2.4.5, there's A and B. I support Ms. Mukai's suggestions. You also notice in there, it does say must. And it says, we're fine with must because it also says if you have low impact development, then you can have a flexible approach to the 100-foot buffer from major gulches. Also support what Rory was talking about in terms of what is a major gulch. As I've testified in the past, some gulches have banks, some don't. So when you say 100 foot from a bank, where is that when there's no bank? So I think there's still some modification needed in here, but in general, I'm going to support Ms. Mukai's language. Next point, 2.4.14. I spoke to this last time. This has to do with some of the requests from the CPAC and the planning department related to low impact development. It didn't look quite right to me, given my experience in public works. I spoke to the folks in engineering division since our last meeting. Hopefully Jordan Molina can answer some of those questions for you today, but they had some good suggestions, and I'm hoping if you get that far today that you can talk to Jordan about that particular one. Hopefully he's got some better language. Finally, as it relates to the must and the shall, I want to give some perspective that every year the county issues about 1,400 building permits. About 500 of those are for new homes. So that's 900 permits, a lot of which are in the SMA, that are not for new homes. They're for additions. They're to enclose a carport. They're for a remodel. They're for a tenant improvement. They're for a retaining wall. There's a lot of small kind stuff that has to have a building permit that still has to somehow comply with these policies. It's really hard.
1 minute.
When you're doing a really small job. So that's one of the reasons I think the department, when they looked at it, when they put their lens on it, they looked at the lens from Zayed, they looked at it from current division, long range, everybody's like, is this livable the way it's written, given the whole breadth of what we look at? It's not just the big project. It's 900 permits a year of small stuff. So keep that in mind.
30 seconds.
Deliberate. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? Vice Chair?
Again, thank you for coming and testifying. Are there any policies in there that you think should retain the requires and musts? Absolute.
Commissioner Thompson, I haven't looked at it super closely, but you know, it's kind of like saying, geez, you know, we just bought this house. We're young, we're married, we're gonna have kids. And, you know, when we have the third kid, we're gonna build an extra bedroom. That's our policy. And then that comes along and you realize, not quite ready to do that. I want some wiggle room in my own household policy. So I think in general, there's going to be some, I recognize that. So I'd say be very judicious with that. Think about what Cal said. Are you hurting housing? Are you hurting people's abilities to work and live here? If the answer to that is yes, And then the answer to your question is remove those words.
Any other questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Chair. That's the end of the list, both online and in person.
Okay, last call for testimony to everybody in the gallery, although most of you have testified. Last call for testimony online. Put your name in the chat. Otherwise, 3, 2, 1. Okay, testimony closed for now. Commissioners, it's been an hour and a half. Do you want a 5-minute break or should we keep going? 5 minutes? Okay, 5-minute break. We will come back at, let's say, 4:34. Welcome back, everybody. We had a 10-minute break instead of a 5-minute break, so hopefully everybody's extra refreshed and ready to go. I understand we have Director Molina on the line from Public Works. And the Planning Department very diligently took notes of the items that we had flagged for additional discussion, for which we had questions for Public Works. Director Molina, are you there? So I guess for our commissioners, we're going to be doing, I think, for this, a little bit of backtracking into the 2.1 section.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you very much. Does he get this list?
Yes.
Okay. I believe Director Molina, the department shared the policies that we had questions on that hopefully you will be able to speak to. And for the commissioners online, this is 2.1.14, 15, 16, 17, or just 16? Okay, 2.14, 2.15, sorry, 1.14, 1.15, 1.16. Oh, Commissioner Lindsay.
I also have 2.1.9 flagged for the department. Not sure.
Oh, yes. Sure. I guess Director Molina, did you give him questions we had?
Yes.
Okay.
We can read them out loud if
Sure. Would you like the department to review or are you ready to speak?
Yeah, if you don't mind, if you can walk me through your folks'
Sure.
questions.
2.1.14, require the completion of the planned north-south collector road and adjacent multi-use path to improve travel through and out of Kihei and provide access to additional routes for emergency ingress and egress.
So I guess for you, Director, the planning director had noted that the north-south collector road is within plans that Public Works has already. Would you be able to talk about your plans for the north-south collector road and status and how these policies read and if they should be modified or changed or kept as is?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I'm on my phone, so I'm not going to put on the camera. But for the record, Jordan Molina, Director of Public Works. So regarding North-South Collector Road, I guess as I understand the question was a recommendation to delete this policy, noting that it was kind of ongoing already by the department. I guess I would say, given that we're not quite done and it's probably going to be, at least, I don't want to scare you guys, but, 5 to 10 plus years before we're going to be fully done with this what's understood as the North-South Collector Road corridor. I would advise keeping it in the plan because it does inform any future master planning updates, transportation master planning updates that may come down the road. And so I think it would be important to maintain that consistency with the community plan. Thank you.
Thank you. So we should keep that as an action and as a policy within the plan, just to confirm.
Definitely as a policy. I guess I'm not too sure between the action and the policy, whether they keep one or the other, but defer to planning, I guess. But yeah, I would keep it in the policy or in the plan. Like I said, to just kind of reinforce and reaffirm the commitment to these projects over the next years of implementation. Thank you.
Keep it in.
2.1.15 is encourage the state and county to exempt multi-use paths, bikeways, sidewalks, complete streets infrastructure, and the North-South Collector Road from the requirement for an SMA permit and environmental assessment, while maintaining the condition to comply with all other permit requirements, including those of the State Historic Division of DLNR.
Yeah, this would be a great one.
So
I can deliver the project a little sooner, but that's just Public Works' opinion.
So it sounds like this has your full support.
Yeah, it is currently a hang up with the current phase of the project. We are unable to submit for SMA permits at this time.
Okay, loud and clear. Next one was 2.1.16.
Support the integration of wetlands and drainage ways with greenways and multi-use paths. And it was deleted, but in and around the Lipoa Business District, with priority given to the health and protection of the wetlands.
I don't know what this means, to be honest. So I don't know if I have a position on it.
It means to support the development of greenways and multi-use paths in wetlands and drainage ways, but with making sure that the wetlands are protected. The part that was removed is in and around the Lipoa Business District. I think the question was whether or not you think that would be a fine. It's just a support policy anyway. Fine for a policy across South Maui, as opposed to being specific to the Lipoa Business District. Was that correct, Kim? Did I summarize?
I think
that?
so.
I do not necessarily support drainage ways, particularly major drainage ways in Kihei's also being utilized by the public because those are potential hazards that we gotta deal with. And so I think there just needs to be better understanding when we talk about these greenways and multi-use paths and drainage ways. So I mean, as it reads, I don't necessarily support that. And then I'm also not clear about whether the wetland ordinance actually supports that at all either. But there is a safety and hazard concern given the nature of flash flooding and the size of the drainage ways in Kihei. So I would have reservations about mixing the two, just from a public safety standpoint. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Digos.
Yeah, if I remember that one correctly, it was just the removal of the definition of Lapala Business District because it seemed restrictive. I think the testimony was because the wetlands don't necessarily spread evenly or across what South Maui. There's some very sensitive concentrated areas around that business district, which has been defined as downtown Kihei and the Research Tech Park. So I think that was the discussion of it was more broad to leave it out, but the testifiers wanted to highlight those specific areas because they were extra sensitive. That's my recollection.
This was the other one we asked him about.
Oh, there, I also have a note on 1.19.
It doesn't make sense. I mean,
Timing of roadway improvements.
wait. Oh, 19.
Yeah, sorry, 2.1.19.
Okay, encourage the coordination of the timing of roadway improvements, whether private or public, so the concurrent roadway closures and traffic disruptions are minimized.
I'm sorry, what policy number was that one?
It's 2.1.19.
And sorry, what was the recommendation for that? The policy.
I guess mainly asking you if this is feasible.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any objection in concept. I guess, and as long as it's encouraging, what may come up as a conflict is if future projects end up being conditioned or stalled for other projects that are out of their control. You know, that's going to be, that's often a conflict. So as long as it's not intended to be or have that effect, no concern with the policy. Thank you.
Thank you for input. The next one is 2.2.16.
Require new development and redevelopment projects to incorporate interconnected public greenways and multi-use paths throughout the project and connect to existing greenways and multi-use paths where feasible. Public paths must remain open for connectivity and shall not be gated. As opportunities arise, acquire parcels within cul-de-sacs for the incremental expansion of connectivity. I think the question was about the last line, as opportunities arise, acquire parcels within cul-de-sacs for incremental expansion of connectivity. It's currently a policy, but the planning department recommended making it into an action.
Would you have any objection to that being called out as an action?
Or the acquisition of parcels in cul-de-sacs.
Yeah.
I guess more context to what that means. Again, are we talking about existing cul-de-sacs that we would be looking to acquire parcels on, or is this for new development? I guess starting there.
I think it would apply to either if there's a cul-de-sac.
It's in the interest of connectivity.
So like if it's for new development, why wouldn't you just condition that provision be provided and eliminate the need to acquire these parcels? I can see for existing areas, then yeah, obviously the acquisition would be the mechanism by which you would be able to connect to existing roads. So I guess that clarification as far as the intent of this action.
Yep, good point.
And I would just comment that I don't think it should just be limited to greenways and paths. We should think about our roadway connectivity as well. Thank you.
Would you want that, so to revise this policy to include roadways also?
That's correct.
Okay.
Are you saying the action? Like,
Oh.
the action include roads?
Well, I think the policy language itself ahead of the portion of the policy ahead of the action, talking about projects to incorporate interconnected public greenways and multi-use paths. But I guess something along the lines of connectivity with neighboring subdivisions via roadways.
I guess maybe if I can get clarification as far as which part is going to be the policy and which part is going to be the action.
Oh, the
or is the
action
whole
would be,
thing,
yeah.
or is the whole thing going to be an action?
No, the action would be just the last sentence, as opportunity
Gotcha.
eyes acquire parcels.
Okay, okay. I would say also not necessarily just cul-de-sacs are the opportunity for that connectivity. And so recommend broadening that to not just focus in on cul-de-sacs per se. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Okay, I think that was it for Public Works. Unless commissioners have any other questions you want to bring up while he's here. Everybody checking their notes. Okay, looks like we're all good for now. Thank you, Director Molina, for making the time. Appreciate you weighing in.
Yeah, thank you guys. Good luck.
Thank you. And I guess if I can note while you're still here, if there's any other ones that you later on in these sections that you guys have, support or maybe comments on, let us know.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, commissioners, I believe there are other policies in section 2.1 to revisit. Commissioner Lindsay noted 2.1.9 about the 150-foot setback. And then we have testimony on 1.13 and 1.23. Do we want to revisit 1.9 about the 150-foot setback?
I have a question. This is Commissioner Kel.
Yes. Commissioner Kiloha.
Thank you. Did we decide to leave that one? I don't have it in my notes. Or are we discussing that right now?
We can discuss.
We tabled it. Okay.
Yes. I think we did not reach a conclusion last time.
Okay. I know we keep going back to this one, but I keep feeling like the community kept talking about this and saying they want it, but they keep referring to the commercial, this mall. So I wonder, but then I hear Commissioner Lindsay and she brings up, what about if we're going to lose homes, like affordable homes? So I wonder if we can I wonder if it's worth talking about meeting in the middle and being like specifically with commercial versus residential. It crossed my mind.
It's a good starting point for discussion. I'll do Commissioner Lindsay, followed by Commissioner Dicos, but we have, sorry, Comcoach. I kept having another Karen and your brother too. Go ahead.
So we did look into this, and the 150 was just an arbitrary number chosen by the CPAC. It was based on a testimony in December. There is a requirement in the LUC that there's a 30-foot landscape setback that would still allow for widening of Pi'ilani Highway without lessening the 30-foot setback. So there is supposed to be a 30-foot setback in addition to whatever the highway was. The highway has already been widened in that part. And Harry Lake submitted testimony saying that 40 feet would be, I think that was what Kealoha had said, and the Commissioner Kealoha had mentioned in the last meeting. There is also mention of the, as I said in the last meeting, the frontage road, but there seemed to be some disagreement about what they meant by frontage road. And there's no road in the plans that are finalized by the LUC, not finalized. The plans that they had to go back to after the commercial was rejected by the LUC. It was adopted as light industrial in the 90s. Then they wanted to do commercial in the 2012. And that is why people keep referring to the mall.
Thank you. Commissioner Lindsay, followed by Commissioner Dicos.
So what does that mean for future properties? There is commercial there and then 30 feet?
The LUC actually sent it back as saying they are, the light industrial is their zoning and they're supposed to use their current approval for light industrial. That was in 2021, I think. Sorry, I don't have the date in front of me. But for future commercial, that it's supposed to be light industrial. But part of their agreement or part of the stipulations by the LUC was that there's a 30-foot landscape setback. And it is for noise reduction and obscuring the property, obscuring it from the road. The CPAC specifically envisioned a bike path for kids going between the school and the residential if residential is built.
The reason I raised, thank you for that. The reason why I raised my hand was because of who was gonna maintain it. A bike path would be great, but I'm just wondering if a housing subdivision were needing to maintain the landscape setback, that would come out of their HOAs and bring up the cost of the affordable housing, to be there. That's just my other consideration with the whole thing.
Thank you, Commissioner Dicos.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. A lot of people refer to the bigger picture. And of course, there's a lot of emphasis on complete streets and walkability and connectivity. And, with the high school there, my understanding it's pretty challenging for that neighborhood up north of Okai Road to sort of access the high school without having to cross the highway. And so there's huge safety issues there. It sounds like the community is asking for a green space along that highway to address all of that, so that, and even if you're affordable housing, right? We hate to pinch the affordable housing folks and say, well, we're going to squeeze as much as we can in there and you'll give up, you'll still have to drive your kid to school. You won't have the bike way. So I don't know. It sounds like the community wants it. I see how it does a lot of the connection. It can alleviate traffic, and it provides a significant space for all these other, the safety, the connectivity, the multimodal use. So I feel like I want to support the community on that one.
Commissioner Lindsay.
Just to be clear, I'm not trying to not support the community. I agree that there should be space there, but I just think 150 feet is too far. 40 feet or 30 feet seem like reasonable amount of space. That's it.
Logistically, 40 feet could provide for a bike path, as you said, was envisioned by the CPAC.
That's how far the one is on the Veterans Highway. They do also the landscaping and obscuring the development from the roadway is also an important aspect of it. So that does need to be.
Did the SLU, the SLUC approval required it to be landscaped, right? You said? For that very reason.
Yes, it's condition 5.
Okay, so we have, you said 30 feet on Pi'ilani or Mokulele Highway, Maui Veterans Highway, 40 feet from the developer, 30 feet from SLUC, and 150 feet as currently in the plan. Commissioners, any thoughts?
50. You have the 30, a 40.
Okay. Vice Chair says 50. Commissioner Lindsay.
I feel like 30 is recommended and 40 is generous.
Okay. 40 from Commissioner Lindsay, 40 from Vice Chair Thompson. Anybody have any thoughts? Sounds like no strong feelings. Oh, Commissioner Dicos.
Yeah, that'll be 150 from Commissioner Dicos.
Okay. Commissioner Kealoha, Commissioner Hipolito, want to weigh in? Commissioner Hipolito. Oh, you're coming across really quiet. Oh, still quiet.
I was just looking up to see what they were doing at that
Oh,
meeting.
somebody's online. Somebody online is not muted.
Oh.
Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4.
I can hear you.
Try again.
Chair, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, better now.
Okay. So I think the 150 feet, I support the community, but I think from my perspective, 150 feet, that's quite a bit, you know. And we can throw all the numbers we want out there. But we got to look at what is reasonable, you know, and meeting what the community wants, the South Maui community. And for us as commissioners, what we think is somewhat adequate. You know, I hear 30, I hear 40. If you add 30 to the 40, or if you look at the reference point of Veterans Highway, 70 feet, you know, which is half of the 150, even that would apply. So my opinion is that I feel 150 is quite a bit, but I'm open for what the other commissioners, I would support what the other commissioners support, except the 150.
Thank you. Commissioner Kealoha.
Yeah, I'm in between still. 150, I can see how that's a lot, but I feel like 30 and 40 is just a real slap in the face to the people who spent the time making this. So I'm in between there, I guess. Can we move a little bit up? I don't know. At what point does it like, what is the difference between 30 or 40? I don't even know, but I don't really know where to go from there. What about we do 70? What about 75 is half? 75 and 75 is 150.
75 would be half.
How about we move there?
Commissioner Lindsay.
My only concern is that we're just throwing random numbers out there and we're just gonna add on to the problem because there's nothing warranted about the 150. So like we're just, throwing numbers.
You said, sorry, Mokulele Highway you said was
Kealoha in the last meeting had said it was 40 feet.
40
for the
feet.
Bike path.
Okay. Well, that is at least some precedent, and that's sort of the same area. A road that connects, it would be uniform in that way. And we see that is enough for landscaping and a bikeway that is well used. Should we go a little bit bigger and say 50 and move on for now? Okay, okay. Is everybody, let's see, if everybody is amenable to say 50 feet. Commissioner
Chair.
Dulos.
Yeah, I think we're, I'm certainly willing to compromise here. I think we're just stuck in, we see what's the only thing existing, which is the current, bike pathway, and we think that's the bar we're setting. I mean, I think they're envisioning more than just a little bikeway. There's more that can happen to move people around, multimodal, share ride, mixed use. So I think that's why we're constrained a bit, is we see, well, there's the only option is a path, a bike. Bike doesn't need much width. And so we're stuck in there, but I'm willing to compromise for sure. Yeah.
The other suggestion that was in written testimony is to say where feasible. As another option. Commissioner Lindsay.
So with this, does this 150, does it go to the county after that or it stays with who?
Valid question.
If it were to go to the county, I would support that because the county can maintain that and they can connect multimodal, whatever, all of the transportations needed. But if it stays within the landowners, and I'm assuming the HOAs of these subdivisions, they're gonna just need to maintain a green space that is gonna get more and more expensive over time. Or they're not gonna maintain it because they can't afford it.
Yeah, maintenance of that is an issue, and it's somewhat of a fire-prone area. You would not want that to go unmaintained. We're gonna have to decide on this at some point.
I like 50. That's a 4-lane highway.
50 is a 4-lane highway. Commissioner Hipolito.
Thank you, Chair. I would support 50.
Thank you. We put 50 down for now, and everybody can sleep on it and come back at our next meeting. Any objections? Commissioner Lindsay.
While we're sleeping on it, can we find out if that space can be given to the county back or if that is an option?
Department? Okay. You got that noted down? Okay, department has it noted down.
Okay.
Okay, last thoughts on this? We'll move on to the next one. Okay, thank you. I think we had testimony and discussion on 1.13 and 1.23. This is in regards to the Mauka bypass, Mauka North-South Collector Road, the Mauka Multimodal Transportation Corridor. Vice Chair, question?
Yeah, what's testimony to eliminate 1, 2, 3 and keep 1, 1, 3?
That is the testimony that we got. Yes.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Okay. Vice Chair Thompson says that is reasonable to keep 1.13 and remove 1.23. Commissioners online, thoughts? Commissioner Hipolito.
I support Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. Commissioner Ticos, Kealoha, Lindsay.
Chair, can you clarify, eliminate 1.13? Is that what you said?
It was to keep 1.13, and the reason discussed is that this new, and I think we should insert Mauka multimodal transportation corridor is envisioned by multiple developers already. Whereas 1.23, per the testimony we received, is not really supported by, transportation departments. And to some extent, not the landowners either.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Lindsay or Kealoha? I guess the consensus between at least two of us so far is to keep 1.13 and remove 1.23. Commissioner Lindsay?
I agree too.
Okay.
Sorry, what is the difference between the Mauka Multimodal Transportation Corridor and the Mauka Bypass?
So as it was described to us, the multimodal corridor would be like a north-south collector road, but Mauka of the highway. So it would go like through the developments that are there, like the tech park has, I think, stub outs already that would connect to this roadway. And then the ones north of that also, whereas the bypass would be like overarching a Mauka more, which is per testimony not supported by like federal funding programs anymore, that type of bypass. Ms. Komkowicz.
During discussion, I think it was more about the requiring the development prior to or concurrent with development that was important. And the bypass was just because it was getting confusing between the north-south collector road and the multimodal transportation corridor is what we called it, so it was more clear. But yes, it's a difference in the type of road that would be developed.
Any additional questions?
They both serve the same purpose, right? Which is to alleviate the traffic.
Effectively, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And one would be in theory, more connected to the development going up, and one would just bypass it all.
Okay. To me, that seems like a lot of roadways. Will take a long time to make, so I would also support Commissioner Thompson's proposal.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Dicos, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know if that was an error or what. It's tough for me to think this was all vetted, and we get one testimony and we take it out. It's just, I just don't have the context of why that was put in, and so it's tough for me. Just toss it out based on one testimony.
The context is probably the requiring it prior to or concurrent with development, whereas the other one is about working with the developers during the development process. But it is already, the north-south collector road is in the plans. Whereas a bypass, I did not actually hear a bypass truly being discussed. Like what a bypass is, like the one in Lahaina.
Okay.
And just to note, the written testimony we got on this was from our representative of Halekala Ranch and Ko'onulu Ranch, which are landowners of these Mauka lands. So it's not just anybody providing this testimony.
Okay, thank you.
So would you be amenable to removing 1.23 and keeping 1.13?
Yeah, I'll go with the commission. I don't have enough info. I defer to the commission. That's the majority. Yep.
Sure, thank you. Okay, moving on down our list. Planning Department, did you have any other ones flagged?
I think you wanted to revisit 2.2.16.
Oh, yeah.
It was flagged.
2.16, 2.17, 2.18. Which is right around where we concluded last time. So 2.16, everybody, we heard from Director Jordan Molina, Public Works, about this. Had a suggested revision to I believe last meeting we said yes to the department's suggestion of taking out the last sentence as its own action. But he offered the clarification that this would pertain to existing subdivisions, because you could, for new subdivisions, in theory, they're in the design process, so they would be able to weigh in on that. But he also suggested that we expand this to more than just cul-de-sacs, because in some cases, maybe there's lots that could connect to side roads. But I do see the wisdom in keeping some flexibility there.
Just comment.
Go ahead. Yeah, Ms. Komkowicz.
In the context of the whole policy, I can see where it sounds limiting, but if you just read what the action would say, which is as opportunities arise, acquire parcels within cul-de-sacs for the incremental expansion of connectivity. That's any kind of connectivity. It's not limited. So
you're saying it could,
I don't think it needs to change.
okay.
If you guys want to add words, that's fine.
So it's more than just cul-de-sacs.
Oh, just, he was saying aside from, so just as opportunities arise, acquire parcels for incremental expansion of connectivity.
Yeah. Yes, he just thought cul-de-sacs would be limiting, is what I heard from him. He did talk about for the policy itself to consider roadways for connectivity. Although maybe this policy is speaking more towards about greenways and multi-use paths than roadways. Commissioners have any thoughts? No strong feelings, looks like. Okay. Well, 2.16 was a stopping point for last time, so let us push forth. Oh, Commissioner Hipolito. If you're talking, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Point of clarification, when I'm reading policy 2.2.16, the guidelines we gotten at the last meeting from the department, I want to make sure that I'm reading it correctly from the book that I have, require new development. Then 2.2.16, the intent of this policy, require new development. And it strikes out a whole bunch of, could we cover this too? Versus just talking about it? Could we read the departments like we did the last time? And the intent of the changes that the department's recommending?
Yes, yep. I think I think we did this right before we concluded the last meeting. But we can review. Yes,
Do you want me to read it out loud?
sure,
Okay.
please.
The intent of this policy is to ensure there's connectivity in the pedestrian transportation network through new and existing communities. The department recommends clarifying that both greenways and paths must remain open for connectivity. In addition, the language of the policy's final sentence is an action that is appropriate for the Department of Public Works to initiate and should be removed from policy 2.2.16 and added as a new action. The planning department recommends the following language. Require new development and redevelopment projects to incorporate interconnected public greenways and multi-use paths throughout the project and connect to existing greenways and multi-use paths where feasible. Greenways and paths must remain open for connectivity and must not be gated. And I read it without the deletions.
And then together with that, there was taking the last sentence and turning it into an action, as we just discussed.
The chair, Commissioner Hippolito, again, so the crossed out, as opportunities arise, acquire parcels with cul-de-sacs for incremental expansion of connectivity. It is striked out. That would be taken as an action versus a policy, correct?
Correct.
What I'm hearing? Okay.
And I recall discussion from the director explaining that making it an action makes it more of a to-do item.
Okay. From my perspective, Chair, I can support this motion or this change.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Hipolito. Okay, Vice Chair is with you. I see nodding online.
Kako.
Commissioner Lindsay and thumbs up from Commissioner Dicos. Okay, good stuff. Now let us forge ahead. 2.17. 2.2.17. So we have a suggestion from the department and we have, I believe, some written testimony about this.
Would you like me to read? Okay. The intent of this policy is to encourage more pedestrian-oriented, complete communities, requiring all new developments to be complete communities with a mix of land uses. May be difficult for smaller developments to achieve and unnecessary as smaller developments are likely to be located in existing urban centers. The department recommends using the original department recommended language. Support the development of pedestrian-oriented, complete communities that meet residents' needs for daily living by providing a mix of land uses, housing close to jobs, services, schools, and recreation, and convenient and safe mobility options, including walking, biking, and transit options. And again, I left out the deletion.
And was that a require?
It was a require before, and now the department's recommending support.
Support. Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, thoughts? Kind of in line with the planning department's comments, there was written testimony that said this might not make sense for all developments. Commissioner Dicos.
So I think this is where we're going to get into, you know, this will apply to all the remove require to soften the language. And I personally going to have strong issues with that. And I'm not sure the clarification, you know, I know this idea of projects will just be stopped cold because of a require in the language. I don't know if planning can, you know, we have a lot of language that we evaluate projects against, and a lot of them, they're not stopped dead because they don't meet, you know. So maybe some clarification from Corp Counsel about, you know, how does that play out? So, you know, this language is a little bit, you know, if this was required, would it not even get through the planning department? It would just fail that point, or it would come to us and we would evaluate it against the community plan?
Chair, is there a question I can help with? I can offer, if you can hear me.
Oh,
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I mean, it sounds like the question is if there's a community plan policy that's mandatory, how would that apply? I mean, some of it depends on what kind of a permit, but if there was a permit that came before you, you'd have to read the policy and see what it says. And if the project could comply with it, then it could, well, I'm backing up a little bit. If something needs a discretionary permit, like a special management area permit, or a special use, or they're called county special permits, or a county, I think, a county special use permit, certain other permits under Title 19 of the county code, the community plan would be mandatory. And so you have to review those policies. And if they required something and the project didn't have it, then the commission shouldn't be approving it. How it would work is I think an applicant would go to the department would review it. If the department says this doesn't comply with the plan, they could either seek a community plan amendment, I guess redesign the project so it does comply with the plan, or they could go to the commission and say, we disagree that our project doesn't meet this, and ask the commission to review the project notwithstanding that policy. And now, of course, if somebody opposes that development and files a lawsuit, they may be able to take that to court and as has been done in other cases, get some type of determination that a project is inconsistent with the community plan and therefore can't go forward. Because there's so many different possible types of policies or items like that, it's hard to say generally whether a given project could meet one in the future. But generally, if the language is very clear and says you cannot do a certain thing, that would prohibit the commission from granting a permit for a project that doesn't meet that requirement of the community plan.
okay. Yeah, because we have tons of language that from projects that are clearly violated, but they go through anyway. So
Okay, I think it would be important to find those projects, see the specific language where those violations are, and not allow those projects to happen. I mean, let's evaluate that, but that's what the law is on that.
okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Somebody had their hand up online. Commissioner Keloha.
I don't I guess I'm with Commissioner Decos. Like, I don't really see the problem with using the word required because to me, this seems like open to the interpretation of the commission, whoever the commission is at the time. So it's like requiring a development to be pedestrian oriented. That just means like they have to have some sidewalks or, you know, requiring that housing be close to jobs. Like the word close is so open to interpretation. So I don't really see why requiring is so restrictive. So for that reason, I would think that I would say that we shouldn't change it.
Yes, Ms. Komkowicz.
The last time your body agreed that it would be required that new developments be pedestrian oriented and composed of complete communities that meet residents' needs for daily living by providing a mix of land uses, housing close to jobs, services, schools, and recreation to the extent practicable and convenient and safe mobility options, including walking, biking, and transit. So you did add the kind of out of saying to the extent practicable.
Commissioner Decos.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I think I like the idea. The idea with require basically forces applicants to address the, the community plan, the needs, and then describe why they cannot meet certain criteria. So that may fall on to the extent applicable, but they have to at least attempt and explain why they were unsuccessful. That is a much more palatable approach to me than sort of the encourage, like, and I say that because I keep saying this, the projects we are seeing are just, I mean, I've been on the commission a year and a half. They are bare minimum. They are, it's hard enough to develop. Let's just do what we can. And that's why we're in the situation we're in. That's why we've got runaway traffic and unsafe areas and all of the stuff. So the stuff we're trying to get in here with the development going forward, I think we need a heavier push. And we heard the community screaming, please, this is what keeps getting stripped down. It keeps getting diluted. Please don't let that happen with this plan. But you might get instances that it's really might be a mismatch. And I think that language that was just shared to the extent applicable can be used to address those. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Lindsay, followed by Commissioner Hipolito.
Regarding the like hard words require versus support, encourage, I think what I'm struggling with is that we have not had a good, clear plan. And so now we're kind of playing catch up with, everything that's kind of going on and has been going on. And then so the community is kind of reacting to the plan, the poor plan. In addition, we see like other communities outside of Hawaii that are well planned and through history. And we see what they can do and what they do. And we're like, hey, I kind of like that, and it's hard to like make those hard decisions given. And then on top of that, we add the cultural landscape here, our own unique circumstances, being such an isolated place, and all of those things. And so catching up with that is hard. In addition, there's already established large landowners, who have been part of this the entire time, and we are we are here trying to fix the problem. We see all of this that's going on. But a lot of it is like keeping in mind that we are still Maui, we are still Hawaii. We should, a lot of these stuff is not like when people see me walking on the side of the road, I literally get phone calls saying like, do you need a ride? It's not like a common thing for local people to be walking, on the side of the road, which is, good and bad. But it is a thing. And that's what I'm struggling with is just, wanting all these things. All of this is like great. That would be amazing. That's so cool. I've seen it in all these places far away. But then like applying it in these like specific circumstances with our specific needs and our specific like struggles is really difficult for me to digest. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Commissioner Hipolito.
Thank you, Chair. For 2.2.17, I support the word require with the additional wording as shared by Ms. Komkowicz. I would support this required with the addition or of that wording versus the department's proposed change.
Thank you. Vice Chair is with you. Thumbs up from Commissioner Kealoha. Thumbs up from Commissioner Lindsay. Thumbs up from Commissioner Dicos. Okay, good job, team. Department got that? Okay, super. 2.2.18. Department. You had a proposed change.
The intent of this policy is to secure more affordable housing and walkable and livable communities. However, very few areas can meet all 4 criteria: be near job centers, schools, transit, and services. And such a requirement would conflict with the desire to have affordable housing in all sub areas. To support the goal of developing affordable housing in appropriate locations while still allowing flexibility, the department recommends the following change. Require affordable housing projects, including projects using Chapter 201H Hawaii Revised Statutes or Chapter 2.97 or 2.96. I did the MCC processes to be near job centers, schools, transit, or services, and include pedestrian-oriented design elements that create walkable and livable communities for all. The change was deleting and adding or. So it just needs to be near one of them instead of all of them.
Thank you. We did get a lot of written testimony on this item also. One of which, oh no, sorry. Discussion, Commissioner Lindsay.
I support the change to or.
Thank you. Commissioner Dicos.
Yeah, I think this is the main one where to the extent practical discussion came up. And, or makes a huge difference, right? Pick the easiest one and scrap the rest. And the intent is the holistic approach of planning and building to hit all the marks. Of course, doing all 4 may not be achievable and not practical. And so again, they've done their best effort to try to meet the mark, the will of the community, but they were not able to accomplish this particular one because, and that's, that might meet to the extent practical.
Thank you.
So I would support the original language by adding that text at the end.
Okay.
Or not necessarily at the end, but where it's practical.
So instead of changing to or, you would want to keep the and add it to the extent practicable.
Yes. I think that's was the discussion where we stopped on the last meeting.
There were comments from the Department of Housing and Human Concerns on this item. And their proposed change is actually to strike be near job centers, schools, transit and services. And so it would say, require affordable housing projects, yada, yada, to include pedestrian-oriented design elements that create walkable and livable communities for all. They say in their letter, their recommendations aim to expand affordable housing opportunities for South Maui residents by revising absolute language and by deconflicting policies that work against provisions of the residential workforce housing policy. Commissioner Dicos.
Yeah, and I know the mantra is just more. We just got to build more. And sort of the low income, I feel personally, the low income gets a bit of the shaft because they get not the prime real estate. They don't get the walkways, the walkability. They don't, because we're just trying to do something, we think of them in a different category. So I understand the desire to just build more that may not necessarily, if they're not close to schools, if they're not close to their jobs. That's been a big concern with the way affordable housing projects are built, is they're car centric. They don't have the benefits that other communities have. And I don't think it's necessarily a price premium to have those other things. It's just to actually think about it in the planning stage. So personally, I would love to see all projects get equal consideration for all the benefits of a smart community.
Thank you. Other commissioners, Commissioner Hipolito.
My question is for Commissioner Dicos. Commissioner Dicos, could you restate the ending of this paragraph and what you would add as your wording by keeping "and"?
So it would say to be near job centers, schools, transit, or services to the extent practicable. So if you've already got a school at near, I think one of the commissioners mentioned that, right? Near is an arbitrary word. So there's flexibility in what is considered near. So we're not gonna, so if there's already a school that it's 15 minutes away, is that near? Is that, so I think there's enough flexibility, but again, it provides a realistic, this is not feasible, that language is in there. So if it's totally unrealistic, we're not going to shut down a project that's good for affordable housing, but can't meet 100%.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Dicos. Chair, from my perspective, I can support Commissioner Dicos' changes that he's recommending. Thank you.
Thank you. And I did note, Commissioner Dicos, you did say transit or services when you read this out loud.
My bad. And change or to and.
Okay.
So to be near job centers, schools, transit, and services to the extent practicable.
Okay. Commissioner Lindsay?
Didn't we have testimony today about it being in the West Side plan? Where it was kind of similar verbiage to Commissioner Dicos's, but it was already established. Do you department have that?
I can in a second. It is 2.5.110, support the development of, nope, that is not it. It is the one that says, sorry about that. Require affordable housing projects, including projects developed under Chapter 201H Hawaii Revised Statutes and Chapters 2.96 or 2.97 Maui County Code to be near jobs, schools, transit, and services when possible. If not possible, projects should at least be near transit. Projects should include sidewalks, parks, bus stops, and other infrastructure and pedestrian-oriented design elements that create walkable and livable communities for all.
Thank you for finding that. Commissioners, comments, having heard the West Maui example? Thumbs up from Vice Chair Thompson. So we have Commissioner Dicos' suggestion on the table. You would support which one? Oh, you would support Dicos's? Okay. And Melda too? Okay. And Commissioner Kealoha, Commissioner Lindsay, okay. Good job, guys. Okay, so you guys got Commissioner Dicos's suggestions. Okay, perfect. Now, moving along, 2.19. The department had a suggested change on this, and there were some testimony on this as well.
The intent of this policy is to secure equitable, affordable housing throughout South Maui. However, requiring affordable housing to be spread equitably throughout the community plan area may hinder the overall development of affordable housing if those requirements cannot be met. The planning department recommends the following. Encourage workforce housing units to be spread out equitably throughout the South Maui Community Plan subarea to create diverse communities in all South Maui residential areas. It is deleting require and putting encourage.
We had received other pieces of written testimony that suggested the same thing, changing required to encourage for flexibility. Commissioner Dicos.
Yeah, I'd probably just have the same recommendation for all, is that we leave the require to satisfy the community's desires, but add it to the extent practicable to those situations where it's unrealistic. So I'll probably have the same suggestion for most of these.
Okay. So suggestion from Commissioner Dicos, keep the require, but add to the extent practicable. Vice Chair.
I would support that. I mean, I'm sure there's people watching the TV now that are swearing. They just said require, but we required 50% affordable housing before from 2006 to 2014 and nothing got built because it was no builder would build it because there's no money in it. So we had to change it and then we got affordable housing. So I think when we require and we strangle those people, then nothing can happen. So as much as everybody came out and said, we want require, I still think we're doing a positive thing for them. We're trying to help the community there. We're not doing it to undermine them. It's to add a better place. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much. Commissioners online. Commissioner Hipolito, followed by Commissioner Lindsay. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. I would support the additional wording as stated by Commissioner Deacos. As it's written right now, require workforce to spread out. It's going to be difficult, but if we, the developers, anyone, whoever's building affordable housing, look at it that way as it's written, but if not, as Commissioner Deacos said, so I would support his changes in the wording and keep required.
Thank you. Commissioner Lindsay.
For this one, I'm struggling with spread out equitably because, you know, a lot of it is already built out, and then like where that means where there isn't any would make it equal, you know, like we're trying to fill in somewhere else is what I see. So I propose to cross out equitably and then go with Commissioner Deacos' suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Support that.
Support from Vice Chair. Thumbs up from Commissioner Deacos. Thumbs up from Commissioner Hipolito. Thumbs up from Commissioner Kealoha. Okay, Department, you got that?
Just clarifying, it's just so units to be throughout the South Maui Community Plan. It was spread out equitably is deleted, right?
I think spread throughout. She was just taking out equitable.
Okay, so just equitably is removed.
Yes. Commissioner Deacos.
Just for clarification, that's on the old language, right?
Yeah, so I think it would say require workforce housing units to be spread out throughout the South Maui Community Plan sub areas to create diverse communities in all South Maui residential areas to the extent practicable.
Okay, yep, thank you.
Beautiful. Moving right along. 2.20. There's a department's recommended change on this.
The intent of this policy is to facilitate more community involvement in development projects prior to county review. The planning department recommends revising the language to achieve the policy's intent without requiring the developer to find a specific committee to refine their proposal. Engage residents in the sub-area nearest to the proposed project during the design process and provide evidence of this engagement before submittal to the County of Maui for approval.
Vice Chair?
Don't we already have that? Isn't it 500 feet for all neighbors? You have to notify? Or is that only for development? Or is it anything?
It's within the, oh, go ahead.
The difference is this says the sub area, not just the 500-foot boundary. So for, I guess South Maui would be South Maui. This was originally the Citizens Committee, so there's a North Kihei and a South and a Wailea
And Malaya.
and Ma'alea.
So this is Jackie from the Planning Department. So the 500-foot one is limited to certain permit types and depending if a public hearing is needed. So this one's just a little bit different where it's a little bit more informal and it's more based on that area and not just 500 feet. Thank
you.
Vice Chair, I see you doing a lot of thinking on this.
Chair,
Commissioner Hipolito.
I like the county's revision to engage versus present. Anyone can just present and not engage. Engaging with the residents, meaning interactive communication. So I like that word engage versus just present.
Thank you. Thumbs up from Commissioner Dicos on that. Commissioner Lindsay, thumbs up. Commissioner Kealoha nodding. So departments change. Sounds good. Okay. Good job, everybody. 2.21.
The intent of this policy is to encourage the development of more affordable housing and to require that affordable housing is provided in close proximity to new market rate developments. This requirement may overstep the limits of the community plan's authority. The department recommends the following changes. Encourage a greater percentage of affordable housing than required by law in all residential projects unless the project is to be developed exclusively as an affordable housing project. Encourage affordable housing obligations to be met within the boundaries of the community plan subarea. Deleting credits may not be used. And changing and adding in the word encourage.
Oh, Commissioner Kealoha.
Thank you, Chair. So is the department saying that, or maybe this is a Mr. Hopper question. Are you saying that we can't enforce that putting in credit, we can't say credits may not be used?
That's a Hopper question.
Mr. Hopper, are you still online with us? We might need to ping him.
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Okay. Commissioner Kealoha, can you repeat your question for him, please?
My question is saying credits may not be used overstepping the limits of a community plan's authority? Can we enforce that? Can the planning department enforce that?
Well, community plans are supposed to set policy. We need to check state law for this one as far as the use of credits as well. But that would, I think, set the policy for the county and sort of dictate that that needs to be removed from 2.96 of the code as an option. Again, the county council would be adopting this though, and also controls 2.96 or the county's affordable housing ordinance. So that ordinance would really need to be changed. This would potentially have immediate effect in potentially for projects that are in the special management area or need other discretionary permits. But as with probably a lot of other policies, you would really need to implement them by ordinance. So you would really need to, because if a project, for example, is just coming in for, building permit approvals or already has its discretionary approvals, it may not have to comply with the community plan to be built. But the, ordinances generally can be applied to people getting building permits and things like that. So, it's something that if it's adopted, the council is going to have to the council is going to have to, I think, take some other action in addition to really implement this and decide if that's something they want to get away from. So again, I want to look at sort of the state law implications of this as well. But in general, something like this would most likely require some additional ordinance changes in order to implement, because right now the ordinance, the applicable ordinance, as I understand it, allows for credits to be used.
Thank you, Mr. Hopper.
Commissioners.
Chair.
Chair. Oh, so Commissioner Dicos.
Maybe the department, can you talk a bit about the credit program? Is it successful? Or is in getting, I guess, successful in getting affordable housing built? Is it, how successful has the credits been?
We don't administer the credit program. I believe the two developments at the north side of Kihei that are affordable housing had credits bought by developers in other areas to enable their developments to be built without affordable housing. Depends on how you measure success. Sorry.
This is Jackie from the department. I just want to say this would be in direct conflict with the Maui County Code. So like as Corporation Counsel mentioned, there'd probably have to be some ordinances to change the county code. And as Karen said, we don't administer the credits program. So that might be kind of complicated for us to see how it's working or being administered.
Sounds like this requires further study. Vice Chair.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the credits. It worked for the developers, but people can't live on inside of credits. They need houses. So, but I do understand the code. So do we have to leave it in or sorry, take it out?
Well,
that's a tough one.
Yes, yes. I think this has from what I understand, this document as we have it has yet to be reviewed by Corp Counsel for legality and consistency and such. But we could leave it in for now. We did have, some testimony that we received during our consideration of the Minatoya list, and people in that talked a lot about credits versus building affordable housing.
I would guess most are against credits.
Well, some of the testimony was kind of what you said, is that, since the option has arisen to purchase credits instead of building homes, we've had more purchasing of credits than building of homes. Yes. Maybe we can assign this one to Mr. Hopper and we can revisit this one. Yeah. Okay. Flagged for next time. I see thumbs up online. Okay. Sounds good. Moving right along to 2.22. Department. There's a proposed change.
The intent of this policy is to support the development of diverse housing types that are typically more affordable. To reflect a plain, more direct description of the homes this policy is encouraging, the department recommends the following language. Support missing middle housing types, multi-unit or cluster housing types compatible in scale with single-family homes, such as Ohana, duplex, triplex, fourplex, townhouses, courtyard apartments, bungalow court, and live work units, and smaller starter homes to meet the growing demand for a diversity of housing options and affordability. What is deleted is simple style single home family, and it is replaced with smaller starter homes.
Thank you. Is that thumbs up? That's thumbs up from Commissioner Lindsay. Thumbs up from Vice Chair Thompson. Thumbs up across the board. Okay, easy one. Good job, guys. Okay, any comments on 2.23 or 2.24? I don't see any from the department. I don't have any notes of written testimony on this one. 2.25, we did receive public comments on. This is increase the inventory of long-term housing units, whether owner-occupied or long-term rental, and whether single-family or multifamily, by phasing out and converting existing vacation rentals to long-term occupancy. Ms.
The-
Gomkowicz.
The impact of this policy is essentially to support the phase out bill you guys just passed. And possibly also lower the amount of bed and breakfasts permits allowed, but it's not super impactful past what you guys have already forwarded to council.
Commissioner Lindsay.
Given our recent Minatoya list meeting and also the limited size of the B&Bs and short-term rentals in each area, I think we have tackled this one for now because of the removal of the Minatoya list and it largely being in South Maui.
Okay, so leave this as is. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's
Okay.
what
I see thumbs up from everybody else online. Okay, thumbs up from Vice Chair. Okay, moving along, 2.26. We did get some written testimony about this. This is saying all permitted affordable and workforce housing units that are required as part of a development approval must be completed before or at the same time as the rest of the project and cannot be separated to a later phase. Commissioner Lindsay, I saw thumbs up from Commissioner Kealoha and Commissioner Dicos, but go ahead, Commissioner Lindsay.
My concern is oftentimes the non-affordable pays for the affordable, at least for the infrastructure. So I am hesitant about that, but I do understand that in the past, people have just did the non-affordable and then the affordable didn't happen. That's my notes here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how to adjust this. Maybe remove the word to be completed or to be in process, maybe.
The other thing, it says all. It could be a portion instead of all. We have options. Thoughts, commissioners?
I will say, I know that Hoku'ula, which is affordable, which is workforce, and like regular priced houses, they're doing it together.
So I know it can be done.
Yeah, it absolutely can be done, but I just want the affordable to be done for sure too. And I know that oftentimes the non-affordable pays for the affordable.
Other commissioners, thoughts? Commissioner Hipolito.
Thank you, Chair. I can go with the way the language written, so I would support the language as is.
Okay. Before at the same time.
Excuse me.
I'm just noting that the language says before or at the same time.
As written.
Okay. Commissioner Dicos.
I support Commissioner Hipolito.
Thank you. It's thumbs up from Vice Chair Thompson. Commissioner Lindsay, do you want to propose a change or?
Can we change the completed to in process or something like that? Or approved and in process or something like that?
So you're trying to allow for the non-affordable portion to go first if needed, but still making sure that the affordable gets built, actually.
Yes.
Commissioner Hipolito.
The key word I'm reading here, it's permitted, meaning that affordable workforce houses that's permitted. So I'm using that. It's already permitted, the process, all the vetting went through. So I agree with Commissioner Lindsay that sometimes, things don't get done. So, and we're all looking for affordable homes. So I think it's in line with our mindsets, even with everything else that we've been talking about.
Thank you. Commissioner Dicos.
Yeah, I think the reason this is in here, I'm not a developer, but I think that's a common narrative that's often pitched to get the non-affordable first. I've done a few math exercises on some projects, and the affordable was a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction. But I'm not a builder, I'm not a developer. So I'm a little concerned of this being a scapegoat to do what has been done in the past, and it's just to ignore the affordable.
Okay, so you're good with the language as is?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's Dicos and Hipolito. Commissioner Kealoha.
I'm also good with the language as is.
Okay.
What about something like they can sell the lots or houses, but they can't use them until the affordable is completed?
Vice Chair.
I don't think it'll work, but
Oh, Ms. Komkowicz.
That's, how would you enforce that?
Oh,
Yeah. I'm just trying to, you know,
could it be like prior to certificate of occupancy?
prior to,
You don't know how you would enforce that? Oh, okay.
can we table this and I'm try and work on it because
Sure.
I'm with you guys, but I think it'll help get more affordable housing if they have some time to get a little bit like if they can do 10% and then do the affordable and then do 90%, you know, or something like that. I think we can come to a middle ground. If we can table it, I'll work on this one, if that's okay with you all.
Everybody good with that? We'll flag this for next time. Department, you got that noted down? Okay, thank you. Moving along, 2.27.
The intent of this policy is to discourage the development of new units for visitors and ensure that new developments serve a range of incomes. The department recommends softening the language of this policy regarding transient units, as developments may already have entitlements and more direct language regarding workforce housing to be more easily implemented. Discourage new transient units and require the development of high-end and luxury homes to provide the required workforce housing within the project area.
Thank you. Just for clarification, within the project area means, you say within the project area because it might be multiple parcels that are involved? Okay. We got various pieces of testimony on this. Commissioner Dicos.
So if, is there a way to address, you said something about if it's already permitted, that might be an issue. Is there a way to put language in there unless already permitted, or? Rather than just taking the teeth right out of it.
Staff is thinking about it. Do you think you could suggest a change, Commissioner Dicos?
I kind of missed what you said about it might conflict with already permitted projects. Is that what you said?
Not already permitted, but already have some entitlements.
Okay.
So like they might be within hotel properties, hotel zone properties, for instance.
Like, and they got their change in zoning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they have their SMA in the process. It's having dedicated a significant amount of money towards getting it done.
Other commissioners want to weigh in? Feelings?
I
No
mean,
feeling?
unless we add unless entitlements have already been obtained, I'm not sure if that language is appropriate. A little out of my wheelhouse.
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Kealoha.
Is it only the hotel zoned units that we're worried about? Like if we said prohibit new transient units unless in hotel zoned? Or does that not make sense?
Go ahead.
This is Jackie. There are a few other zoning districts, like what are some of the BR and some of those others that do allow transient use. I want to remind all the commissioners that some of you were still on the commission a couple years ago where we changed most of the zoning chapters to really reduce the new transient use to pretty much existing. But as mentioned, if a project is in a zoning district that allows the use, and say they already have entitlements, or maybe they don't even need an SMA, I don't know how we would discourage that if it's allowed by the zoning. But like I mentioned, a couple years ago, we really cut down the zoning districts that allow for new transient units.
Commissioner Dicos.
Okay, I understand that better. So I don't know if the language would be unless permitted by zoning.
This is Jackie again. So in that ordinance, there's all kinds of restrictions. Some of them have to get permits, conditional permits, cultural. It's already quite prohibitive in the zoning chapters based on that ordinance. And if you recall, remember we had that moratorium for a little while, and then we had that new ordinance that it pretty much went through almost all of the zoning chapters to reduce the transient uses. And for ones where it was allowed, there were some additional requirements that were added on. Thank you.
Commissioner Lindsay.
For this one again, for the prohibit new transient units, I think we've closed a lot of the loopholes since they started this process, and that's what I think the people were trying to get to. And since those loopholes were kind of closed, I think we should leave it because we've covered it, but it's okay to remove it because we've removed so many. We've closed all those loopholes, well, a lot of them, and there is already a limitation. And they'll see, the community will see the side effects soon. So it's fine as is for that first transient units part.
So are you saying you would go with the keeping prohibit or using the
I think it's a
departments?
I think it's a moot point, so we already did it. You can leave it, you can remove it, it's done.
This is Jackie again. If you switch it to prohibit, then you could have some impacts on other properties, other zoning districts where the use is allowed in certain situations beyond just apartment zoning district, which is what the Minatoya bill is all about. Minatoya bill is limited to apartment zoning district. If you have prohibit new transient units, that's going to affect, all zoning districts. And I don't know if that's what your intention is. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jackie. I support the department's change then.
Okay, thank you. Other commissioners? Got thumbs up from Vice Chair Thompson. Thumbs up from Commissioner Dicos. Go ahead, Commissioner Lindsay.
In addition to that, I think the ending was wordy, so I support the entire department change.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kealoha? Thumbs up. Okay, sounds like departments change across the board. Okay, good job. Next, 2.28. The department had a proposed change.
The intent of policy 2.28 is to provide more affordable housing for those who live in or have generational ties to South Maui. The department also finds it as essential to include those who work in South Maui but may not currently live in South Maui. Making this policy an action for the Department of Housing is essential to achieve the intended outcome. The Planning Department recommends the following language. So this would be a new action. Develop affordable housing residency preference programs for the developments in South Maui to prioritize current residents of South Maui or those employed in South Maui, in particular residents with generational ties to the area.
Thumbs up from Commissioner Deacon. I do want to note there was the Department of Housing and Human Concerns had testimony on this item, but I don't think we're thinking about this as an action. So their comments were to add in those that work in South Maui, which gets to what the department's changes, but they crossed out in particular residents with generational ties to the area. Yes, Ms. Comcoich.
We have gotten comments from the department that that would not be something that's possible, but there are other jurisdictions which have housing that is tied to how long somebody's family has lived there. For instance, San Francisco has a policy that if your family lived there, then you can move back there. I don't know the exact policy. It's been a while since I read it.
Okay, so it could be incorporated into an action. Okay, Commissioner Lindsay.
I think when Councilmember Johnson did some affordable housing adjustments, he did somehow add the generational ties to the council housing. I can ask about that one also, because I know it's sticky with that, but it's definitely something I want to leave in.
Thank you. So I guess just to clarify, Commissioner Lindsay, you would be good with the changing this to an action? Yeah, okay. I see your thumbs up. Thumbs up from Vice Chair, thumbs up from everybody. Very nice. Okay. Thank you. Next. Anybody have notes on 2.29, 2.30, 3.1? I did have a question on the last part of 2.31, culturally sensitive areas. Just how do we know what those are? So the last part of policy 2.2.31 says minimize ground disturbance in culturally sensitive areas.
That would be either through known and recorded documented historic sites on file with the State Historic Preservation Division or other information brought forward to us via our testimony to make us aware of those type of things.
Okay. So that would be enforceable by the department as it's written.
That's something that we could do.
Okay. Commissioner Lindsay.
Is this something we can send to the Department of OEV Resources?
Are you asking us to ask the Department of OEV Resources to look at this policy?
Yes. Amongst the intro also of this draft plan.
The intro, but you mean, can you specify?
Section, yeah, I'm getting the pages. Section 1.3 through that whole part through page 21.
I'm good with getting their input on that. Yeah. Okay. Moving on, 2.32, 2.33. 2.34. $2.35. Oh, we did have written testimony on 2.34.
Chair,
Yeah.
on 3.4, can we also send that one to the OEV resources? Because that's something that they probably handle more regularly.
Okay. Everybody go with that?
Which number was it?
2.34. So 2.31 and 2.34 so far. And the introduction section. Okay. 2.35. There's a department suggested revision.
The primary intent of this policy is to maintain and expand public shoreline access. The language in the first two sentences should be updated to be more precise and implementable by removing redundancy and focusing on the environmental protection of wetlands. The language of this policy's final sentence will only be effective as an action and should therefore be removed from policy 2.2.35 and added as a new action. The department recommends the following policy language and new action. Require that new and existing shoreline development maintain public shoreline access in an environmentally sensitive way with an emphasis on protecting wetlands. When development is proposed, require public access to the shoreline area, including areas currently privatized by gates and walls. Maintain and expand public shoreline access by requiring the establishment of both perpendicular and lateral access paths as a condition of any SMA permit for the properties that abut the shoreline to the extent permitted by law. So that would be the policy, and the action would be update Maui County Code to ensure any public access illegally privatized by gates, walls, or other such barriers is removed within 30 days of notice to allow for full public access.
Thumbs up from Commissioner DeCos. Thumbs up from Commissioner Lindsay. Thumbs up from Commissioner Hipolito.
What's the county lead agency OM? Sorry, I might have missed that.
Office of Management.
Commissioner Lindsay? I see thumbs up from Commissioner Kaloha. Oh, you're on mute, Commissioner Lindsay.
I wasn't sure if like a project like a house on the beach, if they get a new house and it didn't have access in the first house, if when they put a new house, now they provide access. Is that what is suggesting? Like now they have to make a walking path because it's new, or
The existing law is that it's every 1,500 feet. So that wouldn't be for every house that's going in.
Yeah, but if they're like if it's not already accessible. Like I don't know, there's parts of Oluwalu that are like that, and like there's parts all over, but I'm just wondering how those are handled.
So some of those things would be addressed in the either the shoreline or the special management area permit process. As Karen mentioned, there's some distance requirements, but if you have to be careful on the requirements. There has to be a nexus of the requirement with the project. So, like if there's a spacing requirement and that's standard, then that would be something that, yeah, no problem. But to simply require it, just, that could run into some problems there. But those kind of things are typically addressed in the SMA and the shoreline permitting process. Thank you.
So Jackie, you're suggesting that that is handled here in understood?
Well, the proposed department language, does have as a condition of any SMA permit. So that's where to me, that's the appropriate place where you would have reference to this.
Okay, thank you.
This language is similar to what is in the West Maui Community Plan. And it is because there are areas that are privatized.
So there's some written testimony that says this is inconsistent with state and federal case law, the Hawaii Constitution, and the US Constitution. Can we get Corp Counsel to weigh in on this?
Can do that.
Mr. Hopper, are you with us?
Chair, could we go over the policy again? This may have been one that we discussed. I'm trying to remember if this is one we discussed at the CPAC.
This is policy 2.2.35 regarding, well, as it's originally written, it says require that new development, redevelopment, and existing shoreline development maintain public shoreline access in a culturally sensitive way with an emphasis on protecting wetlands. When new development is proposed, require public access to shoreline areas currently privatized by gates and walls. Maintain and expand public shoreline access by requiring the establishment of both perpendicular and lateral access paths as a condition of any SMA permit for properties that abut the shoreline to the extent permitted by law. And then,
I think, sorry, go ahead.
oh, and then the department's proposing the last part of this to change into an action. Any public access area illegally privatized by gates, walls, or other such barriers shall be removed within 30 days of notice to allow for full public access as deemed legally right per any affiliated law mandating it so.
Yeah, I can review this along with the testimony. The potential issue is whether a given development, the impacts of the development would generally have to be proportional to the access required. I think that's where to the extent permitted by law language comes from. I think I recall that from the West Maui plan and looking at that issue. That's something we can look into, but I think the language would have to, sort of require that the access required would be proportional to the impact of the development, because I think that's the requirement that we have to follow. So, like, as I said, I could review that along with the testimony and, get maybe some more detail to you on that or any suggested language.
Thank you. That would be welcome. Ms. Comcoach, do you have the West Maui Community Plan language?
Get it.
Require public shoreline access to be provided through the establishment of both vertical and lateral access through public rights of ways and public transit corridors as a condition of any SMA major permit for properties that lie within the special management area and abut the shoreline to the extent permitted by law. So the part about in an environmentally sensitive way with an emphasis on protecting wetlands was added by the CPAC.
Yeah, so I think the phrase to the extent permitted by law would require that the access be proportional to the impact of the development. And so that would have to be, the access would have to be decided by the commission if it's an SMA permit, the department if it's a minor permit, but it would have to be, again, proportional to the impact of the project to be consistent with the law.
Commissioner Dicos.
Yeah, just trying to wrap my head around this too. So, probably a quarter of West Maui is inaccessible. So, and they're applying for SMA permits every couple of years. So I'm just, I heard the West Maui plan referred just to SMA majors. Is this going to apply to other permits? And then I'm not clear on how you weigh the impact of the permit application action versus will it require, would it trigger a requirement for accessibility?
Yeah, generally the impact, you'd have to see that the project that's coming forward is somehow taking away access, somehow impacting access negatively. If you're going to require that project to build and dedicate an access to you, it's got to be proportional to what it's taking away. So you couldn't require, like, you know, a single family home to build an access way that has the that's going to make up for access that was taken up by a bunch of previous developments, for example. Now, of course, you can review a given project and feel that, and if you do the analysis as we sort of talked about earlier today, what are the adverse environmental ecological effects of the project, and see that, you know, the conditions to mitigate the impacts of the project are not sufficient, you can deny a permit in that case. That can also consider cumulative impacts as well, you know, in the area. But in general, if you're going to exact something from a project, what you're exacting has to be proportional to the impact of that project. So you have to have some sort of showing, you know, of that before you can require that.
Okay.
You can require a developer to do that analysis, I believe. You know, it's similar to, you know, cultural or environmental impacts, that you can say we need more in the record from a, you know, a developer to show what your impacts are. You know, there's case law on that as well, certainly for cultural resources. But again, proportionality is, and we I mean, we went over that in the training for the commission. It deals with any condition. You have to have a nexus and rough proportionality with, you know, conditions on the development that you impose. And this is just sort of a specific sort of example of the type of development condition, but it still has to have a nexus and be roughly proportional to the impact of the development.
Okay, hypothetically, you got 20 condo units with no shoreline access. All of them are applying for repair permits every couple of years. They may not trigger SMA major. Does that play a role in here at all, or no? Those are minor permits.
I don't know how
or
20 unit
repairs.
condominium would not be a major permit.
I mean, 20 condo buildings that are,
Again, I'm not sure how that would not trigger a major, but I mean, like, I don't think this, I don't
well, I
think
don't
this
mean new
language,
development. I'm just thinking a repair permit, like a foundation
Oh.
repair or a seawall repair.
well, I mean, I'm not even sure what you would do in that case. What land would they have to dedicate? I mean, you know, I'm not sure what lands they'd have to dedicate, and you would generally be dealing with the impact of the project. I mean, an alternative is for the state or the county to condemn or purchase access through existing lands. I mean, that's an option as well. But when the county or the state does that, they generally have to pay compensation for it. If the exaction is done during a development as a condition of development, and it is proportional, the U.S. Supreme Court has said that the state or the county does not have to pay in that case if it's conditioned on a permit that has those impacts. That's how you can require those exactions without the state or the county paying compensation for it.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, commissioners, how would you like to move on this?
And I do want to state, I don't necessarily see a problem with how this is worded, but it's a bit different than the West Maui, so we can look at it in some more detail. But I do think the phrase "to the extent permitted by law" still requires that type of analysis done in each case.
So as it's currently, well, as proposed by the department, it's okay. And as currently written, it's okay as long as it has that phrase in it.
I want to review it again in light of the testimony and things like that. But in reading it, since it's pretty similar to West Maui, it's broader, so it's not just SMA major permits. And there was other language talking about wetland protection as well, which isn't necessarily problematic, but it's just different. So it's not something that we had gone through in the same amount of detail as the West Maui plan.
Okay, so you can examine this for us along with the department's proposed changes and get back to us next meeting?
Yeah, I think I should be able to do that. I can talk to the department about that, and I think there was another one that we had discussed as well.
Okay, thank you. Department has that flagged. Okay, next 2.36. 2.37. There's written testimony. There was some written testimony that said this might inhibit development. Um, 2.38.
Chair, I was on 2.37.
Okay, yep, go ahead.
I have notes. On adoption, infrastructure, public facility services available prior. So like there's like schools, for example, which aren't county jurisdiction, traffic, widening the highway. All of that needs to be figured out before these developments come online.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that there's no building that happens in past, what is that? Sorry, my brain is going. Before they widen the highway, there's no developments happening past there because the infrastructure isn't there yet.
Could be. Mm-hmm. Which would include all kinds of development, even affordable housing. Vice Chair?
Is that one we should scratch? Yeah, on my notes from my day one, I wrote, I'm like, stop everything. What it looks like.
Yeah.
So I would say that for practical reasons, that should be scratched altogether.
So just exploring all options on this. Alternative would be to discourage further development.
I mean, oh, Chair, sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner Lindsay.
So I'm not sure how that works. Like maybe Public Works should have commented on this one also, because they are all of the infrastructure things, public facilities and services, human, yeah.
Yeah, it touches upon a lot.
I'm on Thompson's team and say scratch that. It's too much.
Okay. And I guess to that point, there are other policies in here that advocate or more for other kinds of infrastructure to be put in South Maui. Okay, so Vice Chair and Commissioner Lindsay are looking at striking this. Other commissioners? Thumbs up. Oh, Commissioner Hippolito?
I would support Vice Chair Thompson.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Keloha, Commissioner Tikos. Commissioner Lindsay.
Maybe you guys can provide us with some intent of this policy so we get context.
This was added by the CPAC, and I believe this is in the Kihei McKenna Community Plan. And that's what I was just looking at is for the exact word phrasing.
Like this is a carryover from the last one.
It's a carryover. Okay, yep, exactly. Upon adoption of this plan, allow no further development unless infrastructure, public facilities, and services needed to service new development are available prior to or concurrent with the impacts of the new development.
Commissioner Keloha.
So are you saying that having this in the plan does not prevent development when the infrastructure is not there? I'm
Didn't
confused.
seem to. I think it was probably taken out because it didn't really have an impact. Because how do you determine that the services are for that development? I mean, there's certain the road for a certain development needs to be developed, but do all the highways need to be developed as well?
Commissioner Lindsay.
In addition, like who's paying for that? Like immediately, okay, I want to build 1,000 homes in 1,000 affordable homes. Now, county, can you just fix the road real quick so I can put in those? You know what I mean? How does that get prioritized?
Commissioner Digos.
Yeah, I see the intent of it and I align with the intent. We often get ahead of the infrastructure. That's why we have sewage issues, traffic issues, you know, all of that. So I understand the intent, but I do think the language is a little fluffy that, you know, it'd be hard to align whether that street, that road, that sewer system direct is not supporting a particular project. So I like it in there because it's sort of a reminder that we want to get the infrastructure in before we build everything out. But I don't think it's holds a lot of teeth personally.
Yes, I think Commissioner Kealoha brings up a good point that there's been lots of development in South Maui, even with this policy in the community plan. Commissioner Lindsay?
Then brings up the point, who's enforcing this?
Yeah, and how do you measure infrastructure, public facilities and services needed to service new development? It's very broad.
So maybe we'll talk to Public Works and see what he says, and then he can get back to us because they've been in it for years and years already, so they know.
Okay, department got it flagged for Public Works. Okay, we are so close to the end of section 2.2, but a little bit far away. Ane pau. And it is 6:58 p.m. Our stopping time, as stated, was 7 o'clock. So I think this might be the end of our analysis for tonight. Good job, everybody. We will pick up our next meeting on 2.2.38 and move forward from there. Department, in the meantime, you'll send our flags over to the respective departments that we had asked about. Corp Council will be getting back to us. Yep. Okay. Well, Thank you, everybody. Lots of brain work tonight. Appreciate you all. Ahui ho.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, staff, for being there all day with us.
Yes, and staff, thank you folks.